We're going to get started. Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Welcome. I'd like to begin our meeting in a good way, and I will get to our land acknowledgement, but I would like to begin by um, recognizing and acknowledging one of our amazing students. We have so many in our division, but one student in particular was honored by Alberta School Boards Association at our Honoring Spirit Indigenous Student Awards ceremony last Monday in Edmonton. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the work that Sturgis Big Bull has done amongst his peers in his school at Galbraith Elementary. Being able to be up there and represent our division. And he was the youngest student that was provided this acknowledgement, grade 1, absolute cutie. And some of the work that he's doing at the school is just really bringing his Indigenous culture and the importance of that to other students within his school. So we will, in a formal way, be recognizing him at his school. So it's amongst his peers, and we're going to be doing something that will allow him in front of his peers, and as trustees, we'll all be invited to come there and acknowledge him there. So I didn't want it to be here at the board meeting because that's certainly not what a grade 1 student wants to be doing. So, but I thought it was really important that we at least do recognize the important work that our students are doing in our in the Indigenous ways of making sure that that's important to all within his school community and within our division. So with that, I will begin with our land acknowledgement. We are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pay respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Oki and welcome. Thank you. So with that, we do have an item that we need to deal with in camera. So would like a motion to move into camera. So Craig and those in favor, and that's carried. So we will be moving into camera and we'll notify when we're back out. Perfect. Thank you. We're back into regular meeting. You have in front of you our board package. And I'll begin with the consent agenda. Is there anything that needs to be pulled from consent agenda? Christine.
I would like to pull the Policy Advisory Committee, please.
And are you needing to talk about that before 10.3 on the agenda? It doesn't matter. Okay, so then we'll put that under 12.4. There's no action required. Okay. Okay. And any others to be pulled from the consent agenda? Seeing none, from our previous practice, we do need a trustee to move that the requested item 3.3 Policy Advisory Committee report to be moved from the consent agenda for discussion in the regular meeting agenda. Can I have somebody make that motion? Christine? And those in favor? And that's carried. Now for the rest of the agenda, is there any errors or omission additions? Seeing none, if I can have somebody approve the agenda. Christine, and those in favor? And that's carried. Next is approval of the minutes. March 26 minutes are in your package. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, if I can have a motion to approve the minutes. Andrea? Those in favor? And that's carried. And there's no business arising from the minutes, so we'll move on to our Associate Superintendent report, business and operations.
Okay, well, I'm so excited. I don't know if you've driven by the school at Gary Station, but we have a building. It's all areas are now visible. If you look at the bottom picture, the part that has just been recently had the structural steel up is to the right is our early learning area, and then of course the admin suite, and so that's kind of the front entrance between the two. I had a chance to actually go visit the site, tromp around, and it's very exciting to be inside. My grand staircase isn't up yet, but I told them I want to be the first one on it when it gets put in place. So they're cement stairs; they won't be up for a little while. But it's really exciting to see how the school is shaping up. It's about 4 weeks behind schedule, but they anticipate they'll make that up here in the summer months. And a reminder of the West Lethbridge Elementary School boundary open house that will be on April 30th from 4:30 to 8 p.m. at GS Lakey Middle School. Opportunity for our West Lethbridge families, community businesses to come by, take a look at some display boards of kind of the current state of where we're at with our enrollment with West Lethbridge and what are kind of the problem we're trying to solve, and then some of the solutions that we're proposing. They're just options, and of course, nothing has been set in stone, but this is an opportunity to get some feedback and maybe some ideas on those options, or maybe another option that we haven't considered. And so that'll be there. There's a survey that people can complete after looking at the information to give us feedback to about School Boundary Alignment Committee. We'll also on May 1st, we'll be posting those same boards as well as a link to the survey for anyone who wasn't able to attend the open house. They can take a look at the information and still provide us feedback. That'll be open till about May 16th. And then that information will be compiled and sent to the School Boundary Alignment Committee for review and to see what information we have that will inform our next steps on either other options or tweaks or changes to the options or other things that we need to consider before we actually present a final report to the Board of Trustees. And budget, of course, we're in budget season right now. We're currently just finalizing our allocations to our schools and instructional programs, and those will be going out to our schools will start developing their budgets. This has definitely been a challenging budget. It's challenging from the aspect that, as you can see from my did you know, we're not funded for every student because of a weighted moving average. So there's about 282 students that we don't actually receive funding for based on our enrollment estimates. We also, we're like many households in the city of Lethbridge and in the province, we're all facing inflationary costs with the rising costs of goods and services, inflationary costs with utilities and that sort of thing. And so the school division has those challenges, as well as, of course, we have an increase to our benefit costs that are driving up some pressures. But we're working through those pressures. Every year we have a challenge, and we do face it, and in the best interests of our students. So. We're working way through that. And May 21st at 1 p.m. is the public presentation of the draft budget. And so the public will get an opportunity to see what we've done with our resource allocations and our plans for the next school year. Occupational health and safety. I haven't had a lot of April showers yet, but it was just a reminder, going along with the walk like a penguin theme, we're just reminding people about wet floors when we start to have rain showers, that they are slippery and you can slip and fall. And I found some interesting data on concussions. I'm not going to read that. That's just for information. And it's Health and Safety Week from May 6th to 11th. So everybody has a role to play in safety. And so we just remind everybody about that. Technology, we have a very exciting event coming up in just over a week. The Alberta Esports Championship. It'll be at the Agri-Food Hub at the exhibition. And May 3rd, we have our opening ceremonies around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And this is a free event on May 3rd and 4th that people can come and view. But we've got students that will be participating from across the province in the actual gaming sessions. And so it's going to be a really good event. There's even we'd call it a e-recycling. If you can bring your e-recycling in, if you got any old computers, you can bring that in to be recycled. And so there's lots of different events. There's lots of little displays and things going on. So it's a great opportunity. Just come out and see what's going on. And our tech team is always out in the schools or involved. Our tech team and our college students are out at Lakeview Elementary School, and they were showing students actually how to take apart a computer and what's inside a computer. And I was actually talking with Connie from Lakeview yesterday, and she said the kids were so engaged and just so excited by that opportunity. So it's really nice that they're sharing their knowledge with our students. And tech team always goes out to Epic Career Fair, and they showcase what it's like to be a technology professional. So that's always good. We've been doing some work with our security systems, working with doing a dark web scan. Dark web is sometimes where they'll throw out, if they get your data, the bad actors, they'll throw it on the dark web for sale, or for future use. And so we've been doing some scanning there and doing some sweeps and that sort of thing. And so making sure that we are addressing any security concerns that we see. And then what's really cool that happened actually just over the spring break, the Lethbridge Astronomy Society bought a dome. That's in the pictures there, and they have the ability to go in and you can view the solar system, and you can use VR to actually be on a spaceship going to the moon, and there's all kinds of really neat interactive activities. And so they brought that in to set it up. They just got it to test it out, and they will have it available for schools who can actually book it out with the Lethbridge Astronomy Society. So it's a great way for teachers to have another resource to teach kids about the solar system. So our technology team was helping with that. And yeah, and we're working on storage and data and that sort of thing, all the fun stuff that tech department does. Transportation, we just rolled out last week, 2 weeks ago, the new registration process for the 24-25 school year based on our new eligibility criteria for next year, which is the 1 kilometer for kindergarten to grade 6 and 2 kilometers for grade 7 to 12. So notifications have gone out to eligible parents through Power School. And those registrations are coming in lots of questions. And so if anybody does have any questions, they can certainly contact our transportation department and they'll be happy to help you out. And save the date. So we've set our date for the My First Ride event, and this Holy Spirit's turn this host at one of their schools. It'll be at Children of St. Martha in West Lethbridge, and it'll be from 10 to 2 on Saturday, August 17th, and lots of fun and goodies and a good time. So put it in your calendars because I expect to see you out to help out. And that's about it.
We have a question right off the bat from Craig.
Yeah, under the budget, and I just knowing how governments tweak things, the 282 students that are not funded, if we go over our projected enrollment, we do get some funding, but it's not fully funded, correct?
Based on what's happened in the past, yes, that's correct. What did we get this year per student that was over? Was it 1,500?
It's actually not necessarily based over your enrollments. It's anything over 2% enrollment, you get a special enrollment growth grant. And so we, and it's 2,000 for the first, I think, 100 students, and then you get 1,500 after that. And we projected a 2.6% increase for this budget. So we're already getting part of that enrollment growth grant now. And so anything over the 2.6 will get a little more enrollment growth grant. If we're under, then we have to give it back. That's why.
Yeah, and so sometimes politicians pick at things, and I've had lots of experience with former governments that they would say, well, they are funded. If you get your over 2%, they're just not fully funded. And so we just have to be careful on the wording, is that they're not fully funded, I think.
Yeah, that's why you always hear me use the statement, every student fully funded.
Yeah.
So you look at 1,500 to 2,000, but a student, generally speaking, in Alberta, it's about 10,000 per student. I mean, that can vary, but that's a ballpark. So,
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And there is probably a little more money that's added in there as well. Our view is use the September 30th count, fully fund every student.
well, exactly. And that's how it's just that if a politician needs it.
Yeah, I should have added the word fully funded.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a question in regards to, so May 21st is the public budget presentation. I know you said public are welcome to come, and that's great. I know at the DSC, when you and Avis were able to do the presentation, that was wonderful to provide that information. One of the questions was in regards to the budget survey that's gone out in previous years. Are you able to speak to that and what that will look like this year?
So last year we did 2 surveys last year. We did a pre-budget engagement survey. We didn't do that this year. But we also do a post-budget survey to get the sense. So we will do the post-budget survey after this particular engagement that says give opportunity to provide feedback and whatnot on that. So that will go up. And so we will, like always, what we do is we post the presentation on the website, as well as any pertinent information for anyone who may not be able to make that particular meeting or watch it live streamed. So it'll be there, and then they can also provide their feedback on the post-budget survey.
Okay, so there won't be a pre-one like last year. Okay, sounds good. Not seeing other questions. Last month when we had Daniel Heaton here, he was speaking in regards to the West Side study, and we were so close to getting the results of the West Side study. So I'm just wondering where we're at with the West Side study.
Still in progress. There's still lots of work to do on it.
Okay,
It's not quite ready.
so not the 2 days from
No,
our last meeting.
no, it can't. No, it's not ready yet. They're still working. They're still gathering a lot more data. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. There are other questions in the room? Not seeing any. We will thank you very much, Christine, and you have lots going on with all the different pieces you're involved with, so thank you. Next is instructional services. Mike, are you able to speak to that?
It's probably just easier because a lot of it's covered in the board priority reports unless you have specific questions on it. So that might just be easier to do both at the same time if you're comfortable with that. So I'm going to hit a lot of the highlights, I think, anyways.
Christina?
I actually just have a board question for us on this topic. Is that okay? So there's a section about the EAL students and seeing increasing numbers. And I'm curious, I'm actually trying to remember if I've brought this up before, if we could connect somehow with Canadian School Boards Association or something about advocating for a bit more information from the federal government about arrivals. I think one of the things that challenges school divisions across the country is that school divisions are provincially funded largely, and newcomer students' arrivals is largely dictated by regulations at a federal level. And so schools are just blindly going into every single school year with no information other than what we can read in the news about how many students, what types of visas are being approved, where are we seeing people from, et cetera. And this is not unfindable information. Like, it is being distributed to other parties, but not to schools for some reason. And I'm interested in understanding if we can support I'm not sure if there is any ongoing effort or if we could encourage effort to have that happen. Yeah.
I can certainly take it forward. Would you be able to send me an email just outlining the information that you're requesting and the knowledge that you have of others that are receiving it? Thank you. Craig?
Yeah, I'm just concerned because I'm not sure if we still get some federal funding for French immersion and some other things, but the bill that the government's is supposedly trying to pass, where you have to get permission from the Alberta government before the federal funding comes. How will that affect our division, for instance, if the federal government funds, and there was some money that used to be funded for French immersion, but now if that bill passes, any money from the federal government to come into Alberta has to go through the provincial government before it can go directly to municipalities and organizations. So I'm just wondering how that affects school boards.
Christine?
So with the French immersion, we get a grant, but it already goes through the province. So it goes to the feds, to the province, to us. So we don't have to worry about that. We have a good example. We have an agreement called the Jordan's Principle Agreement. That is a federal agreement. I imagine the next time I have to go to sign that agreement, I will probably have to seek approval for that. But we have not been given any official direction on how that works yet. But the way I would interpret it is I would need to seek ministerial approval to have that signed.
And that would be if the bill is passed. At this point, it has not passed.
Exactly.
Yeah, it hasn't passed yet, but-
If the bill's passed, and that's likely what will happen.
And that would just add a layer of red tape to everything.
And that I can just certainly add from a provincial perspective with Alberta School Boards Association. It's definitely conversations that are happening in regards to what those impacts are. And I know at zone meeting, there was some brief information, but you'll see more information coming forward in that regard, and just looking for the impact and then how advocacy can happen to make it a smoother process for our school divisions and for students, right? So, any other comments or questions? Okay, so we'll cover anything for Morag when you're doing the perfect. Okay, and then next we'll move on to human resources. Robbie.
I don't have very much to add. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take any questions you have based on what's provided in my report.
Comments or questions? Go ahead, Craig.
When we're talking non-union, that's basically the Ed Center?
Yes.
Okay,
And there's other positions that are non-union.
throughout the division?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Not many, but a few that would be included in the non-union.
Andrea.
Once schools have their designation, then I imagine that staffing starts to happen. And could you just remind us of that process for staff from one school, for example, applying to a different school, how that works?
Sure. So, what's happening right now as we're unrolling the budget is schools will be communicated with by me for their teacher allocations. Rhonda and Jackie will have met with all schools in regard to support staff allocations. And so, of course, there's different funding models for elementary, middle, and high school, but those all schools will be communicated with what their teacher allocations will look like. Then there would be communication with those teachers on probationary contracts, whether or not we're able to move forward with those contracts based on those allocations and the ability to offer. Once that settles out, we would be moving into posting for probationary positions. And so any probationary positions are free for teachers within the division to apply on. Once those are finished and that's completed, we move into whatever's finished, whatever's left for probationary positions that come up from some of those transfers that might happen, as well as our temporary positions. Did that answer your question for you, Andrea?
Yes.
Okay.
So there is some movement between schools, like teachers.
There is opportunity for
Opportunity.
movement. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. And I realize this is your first year in this.
No
but
problem.
Historically, there's some movement between schools.
And that will continue.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a question, Robbie, and I think this is probably the best place. I've certainly been asked, and I know that there's lots of process happening around it, is principal postings went out, and I get asked, when will we know? And I'm like, there's lots of moving parts. So I'm just wondering from an HR perspective if you can provide any information on that.
We should be able to do some announcements this week, certainly, on some of them, and in the very near future on the rest that have been posted. But you will definitely be hearing some news on some of those positions this week.
Okay, thank you. I know there's lots going on for all of that. So, and then I know that you're coming into busy season. So I think we'll barely see you over the next couple months, probably.
It's very exciting.
Yep. So thank you for all that you do. And I know that you'll need lots of support going into the next few months. So
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So next we'll move on to superintendent report. And first one is board priorities report.
Yeah, so I'll just hit some highlights from the report and then happy to answer questions if there's any questions. Under governance, it talks a little bit about Erin doing work with the elementary report card committee. I know with the new curriculum, there's an opportunity to realign some of that reporting. She's come to DSC to connect a little bit. I know there's some interest at the middle school and high school level to see what that looks like and potentially look at reporting as well. And of course, assessment is a theme for our administrative committee in terms of our professional learning over the next couple of years. It's not just going to be a 1 year, it's going to be a few years. So yeah, lots of stuff going on with that. And hopefully over the next couple of years, we'll see some changes and some advancements. Under growing learning and achievement, just under the science section, you've heard this a bit before, but just a reminder with the new curriculum, one of the areas, under science there, the focus on coding, and that's going to be a big change, and we're certainly doing our best to support that. But that certainly creates some folks who feel a little bit of anxiety because they don't necessarily feel comfortable with the content of teaching coding. So we continue to work on that, and that'll continue. That'll take a little bit of time to get that to get people feeling comfortable on that. In terms of experiential learning, those sorts of things, you can see there's a list of grades 6 to 9 locally developed courses and high school courses that are being sent out. And that's a really important part of the broad range of programming that we offer. There's courses that are created by Alberta Education, and then there can be locally developed courses that go through a process and get ultimately approved by the board. So it's just another great way provide our kids with some extra experiences. In terms of the wellness section there, I know Robbie and Rhonda hosted a collaborative community on the, when would that have been, when we got back from Easter, April 8th or whatever it was, with administrators just working on staff wellness, kind of continuing some of the work that that we started last year. So that was great. In terms of diversity, it talks in there about Carmen and Sajin again, working to complete ELA intake interviews and making sure we're getting those done as quickly as possible, but also that they're getting done appropriately. They're certainly very busy folks, and we really appreciate the work that they're doing. But that's going to be ongoing. I know, Christina, you mentioned that question about ELA, and it is very tricky for us because we just don't know the numbers. It's hard to figure out what the patterns are going to be coming into Lethbridge. So you end up sort of scrambling, and some of the processes can be pretty complex and take some time. So it's certainly a challenge, but Carmen and Sajin have been doing a really good job of trying to meet that challenge. Under division professional learning, as I mentioned, April 8th was our division-wide collaborative community day. So in the morning, it's collaborative communities, and basically teachers can get together, create their own collaborative community, direct their own professional learning. We do offer some targeted professional learning on those days as well. And then in the afternoon, it's school-based professional learning. So always a good day. That's a day that's set aside in the school calendar to make sure that we're taking time to do our professional learning. Then, of course, a little bit later under that, it talks about Rebecca doing her 10th SIVA training, which is supporting individuals with valued attachments. I usually talk about this one as well because it's a great opportunity to provide training for teachers and for support staff as they work with kids with a whole variety of needs. So that's kind of a general highlight of some of the things, but if there's any questions, then happy to respond.
Andrea.
During your report last month, and I'm not sure where the government is heading with testing for next year related to enhancing dollars. I asked about when teachers have so many tests, like if the government's asking for tests and we're asking for testing, and some is individual, taking up to half an hour per child. I had asked the question, who determines how much release time there is for a teacher for that?
And I did get a response to that. So I thought the question was specifically towards FMP, and as it relates to FMP, every teacher is doing FMP has an access to a sub, and I believe that's usually so there's money provided, and then generally speaking, between at the school they kind of figure out what that looks like. And some schools will bring in a specific sub, some will bring in a floating sub, depending on how they're doing it. Some might do some half days. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Has there been feedback from teachers to admin about that being enough time, or admin to you about that being enough time?
Yeah, it's something that Aaron and I spoke about early in the year because with the new government assessments, it's challenging. So the feeling was that we don't want to take a look because we were already started and into it, but it's definitely something we have to take a look at. I am concerned that it's too much testing in too short of a time. And so what are the things that we can control? There's some things we can't, right? There's sometimes the government says we need to do X, Y, and Z. So yes, it's something I've heard. I can certainly make a note of that and see if we can get a little more detail on where we're at and what some of the plans are related to that. And sure, some of it's, I guess, a sub issue, but I think some of it is there's just a lot of assessments. And if we are constantly doing assessments, it makes it really, really difficult. And then there's only so many subs you can pull at any one time. So yes, it's a concern out there, but probably something we need to talk a little more. And I'll make sure I make a note and can certainly get back to you. So you can ask me that again the next, or in between board meetings. Yeah, thanks.
Craig.
So if we have a concern about too much testing, in your opinion, the government tests that we're required to do and F&P, which one is more effective and which one actually gets to the root of what we want the students to learn?
Yeah, I'll give you my opinion. Reasonable people can disagree on that. it's a bit of apples and oranges. They're two different sets of tests. So the government testing is designed to collect, it's a little more, it's not quite as personalized. It's designed to collect broad sets of data across entire divisions and the province and then get reported back. Not dissimilar to PATs and diploma exams, but remember a lot of that assessment is about intervention and not every kid gets that assessment. Then when we look at F&P is a little bit different. F&P is more about the teacher does the assessment, so it's a little more personalized. They get the results back fairly quickly, and so they can actually adjust their instruction fairly quickly on that. But it is a legitimate conversation that needs to be had about what we got all these assessments, which ones are actually meeting our needs, which ones are not meeting our needs. And certainly it might be something worth bringing in Erin to have a bit of a conversation because she can bring more detail.
Yes, and I like your response because one is that we're required to do the government testing. You can't get out of that. But two is, does the cost of F&P and added the number of times, the number of hours that you have to put into it, is it paying us benefits if we still have, and we're taking time out of instructional to do that. So, I mean, that's a question that probably has to be raised within the administration and come back to the board. But yeah, it does pose an interesting question. So.
Well, appreciate it. And we can certainly get a little more information to the board on that. Yeah.
Christine.
I was going to ask this question with the instructional services report. So Mike, I'll direct it to you. And if an answer needs to come back next month, that's totally fine. But my question is around the dual credit startup grant. So the government put out $412 million provincially for a dual credit startup grant, as well as a dual credit enhancement grant. And then successful divisions receive funding. So I'm just looking to learn what are the parameters of this grant. And I've had conversation with some staff who've spoken to really wanting to bring in those trades into their schools, and the lack of spaces in the post-secondary institutions. So I guess I'm wondering, has there also been conversation around allowing our dual credit funding to land inside of our schools as a caveat to this post-secondary, or are there parameters where it has to be in the post-secondary? It's kind of two questions, but if I could get some understanding on that, I would appreciate it.
Both good questions. In terms of the grants, I couldn't tell you specifically. I know we've forwarded them on. I know we're in the process of applying for some of the grants and the deadline's coming up right away. I couldn't tell you specifically which one off the top of my head, but we can certainly get that info. So yeah, and then in terms of the dual credit, how do you bring the dual credit back into your school? Well, that's pretty tricky because the whole purpose is post-secondary puts some money in, K-12 education puts some money in, and generally speaking, it is delivered through the college. I know it's part of the reason why they tried to go with the collegiate model, where there's more of a K-12, probably a 7 to 12, certainly 10 to 12 presence on the campus, but it's more specific to them. That has sort of, I wouldn't say it's fallen through, but that's had to be adjusted. So it's a good question. And I think part of the question is, can we access some of the money that's going to dual credit so kids can access particularly things at the college, that sort of thing? Is there a way we can get that in-house so it can benefit us in-house? I don't think so, but it's a really good question. And the dual credit tends to be pretty specific. Like because we were running dual credit last year, we missed out on some collegiate funding because their view was that it's the same programming. We're like, well, no, we don't think it is. But so it can get pretty specific. I think it's something, a point of conversation to start talking about as a board as we move forward about advocacy related to how can we create more flexibility in this funding. Having said that, if it's dual credit, the concept that you take a course and you get credit at college and high school, certainly, or university, certainly the post-secondaries want people on their campus and the kids on their campus or in their courses as much as they can. Yeah.
Are there other questions for Mike on the board priorities report? Seeing none, I see that we have a couple groups in with us. Are all the Chinook people here? Are all the LCI people here? So we will jump ahead to our international trip approvals. And we'll start with LCI. If you'd like to come up to the front and turn your mic on. Are you going to introduce this as well?
Introduce themselves.
Hmm?
Just introduce themselves.
So thank you for joining us. We do ask that you turn on the mic when you, yep. So, and you can hand it off if somebody else wants to talk. So we'll have you introduce yourself and then talk about what you're asking for today. And then we'll move into questions from the board and then into a motion if that's the direction of the board. So go ahead and if you can start with introductions.
Sure. I'm Jen Scott. I'm a teacher at LCI. I was the one who, I guess I'm the teacher in charge of the trip right now. To my right is Laura Murphy-Burke. She's another teacher at LCI. She's currently on mat leave, but will be back just before school ends this year. She is our rugby coach, but stepped away this year because she had a little baby. And to my left is Dave Lowry. He's a parent of one of the athletes on the team and also has been a coach and supporter of LCI for many, many years. So I'm happy they both came to support today. So our rugby team would like to travel to New Zealand next year over the Easter break as part of their season. It would be very early season for them. The plan looks like it's a 2-day flight to New Zealand, where once they get there, they get to spend some time in the place, the cities. They'll work with different rugby coaches. They'll play some different rugby teams of similar caliber to them, learn a lot about the sport in the place where it grew up or was developed, I suppose. And then they'll also get a lot of cultural experiences while they're there as well. Right now, we're hoping that we can get 30 of the athletes to go, which would open up 5 supervisor spots. There's the numbers every 5 students, you get 5 free of charge supervisors to go. And it looks like they're going to play about 4 matches, but they're also going to be learning about the sport. They'll be participating in some workshops and what's the word that I'm looking for? Like training sessions, I guess, with coaches from New Zealand and other athletes from New Zealand. They will miss a few days of school. One of them will be a PD day. Another one will be, well, I guess the other day would be Good Friday. So they will miss 3 days of school in the case that this does get approved. The trip is going to cost close to $7,500. It's very expensive, but it is to New Zealand. It's very expensive to fly there. I know that the students and the parents are really excited about it. They've been chomping at the bit for quite some time to have official approval so that they can get started on fundraising. They have many great ideas for fundraising, and we have a very strong parent group who is willing to head that up. I mean, not the whole thing. Coach Sam Wright, the other coach, is also willing to head some of that up. They've got some really great ideas so far, some which have been shared from JJ from Winston Churchill, who has taken schools or rugby teams on trips before. So she shared her plans for very lucrative fundraising. But I think it will be an absolutely amazing experience for the students. The tour company is very high regarded. The only question that they haven't answered for me yet is whether the students pay the tour company directly or whether they pay the school and then the school pays the tour company. So that's virtually the only piece of information that I don't have right now. Do either of you have anything to add? Okay.
Perfect. So from the board, what questions do we have? Craig?
I'm actually happy to see that. Having been a rugby ref and having been on 2 tours, one to Scotland and one to Australia with boys or girls. So I'm excited that we're trying to get back into that because it's really a great opportunity for all those students to learn of the culture of rugby and learn of what's going on. And New Zealand's one of the top 5 teams in the world. So I'm hopefully that we'll approve it and then you can get on with your fundraising.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board? Christine?
I think it's a great opportunity for students. Thank you for presenting this. I have to be honest, when I read it, the amount is jarring to me. when I look at the context of our community, how more members of our community are seeking supports. We have more supports in schools for students. Um, when I look at the purpose of public education and the accessibility it should be for all things, for all students, the number I have a hard time supporting. And I can appreciate, one of the questions I was going to ask is, have you talked to your parents? So from what you said, it sounds like you have talked to your parents, and you have support of the parents. I guess my question is, how many students are left out of this? Because I think we can do those robust fundraising pieces. How much do you really fundraise, right? So when I think the highest trip that I can recall us supporting is around 4,000. So this is almost double that. And so I guess I would like to know, what are the robust fundraising opportunities? How are students in low-income families going to be supported in this endeavor? Because I believe all kids should have access. It shouldn't just be those who come from financially strong families. And even with fundraising, oftentimes kids who have families who have a stronger support network are more easily able to fundraise, right? So there's even a disparity in the fundraising opportunity. So if you could speak to that, I would really appreciate that.
That's a great question. So, right now, the list that they have is quite extensive, but I'll just point out some of the ones that I think would be great. So, JJ shared that they do a spaghetti dinner and fashion show with a silent auction where anyone is invited to go. There's obviously donations that are provided for the silent auction, and we would be actively seeking those out as soon as we have permission to do that. So, none of the athletes will have to provide anything like pay for anything to be able to fundraise for. We'll be looking for donations for that. They also want to do a month of giving. So one person will sponsor each day for an athlete, and whatever the day of the month is, that's just the amount that they sponsor. So anywhere from $1 to $31, I guess, depending on the month. But that adds up quite quickly. And then they've got some contacts already for like cookie dough, pizzas, that kind of stuff, which any student really has access to. I know our school also has, with the Alberta Liquor Gaming and Association, we have a number to do raffles. So we will certainly access that. I know that Selena for the Florida trip did very well with that, again, with donations. And we will be hitting a different demographic of people and looking for the donations, so they won't feel like they're over donating. They also want to design some T-shirts that they will wear while they're there. The students will design them themselves and then sell them. Knowing kids, if they like merch, they'll buy it. Obviously, they would be marked up, but not in an inaccessible price. And then we're also hoping to get some sponsorships in-game rosters. So just making sure you have the businesses there. They pay a little bit just to advertise in the rosters for the games. So that's what they have so far, but they haven't got the parents together.
And there is a precedent for some fundraising already. They have done some efforts this season in a one-day bottle drive of the senior varsity team, who this would apply to. They raised about $1,200 in that one day to contribute towards in-season fees for this season. So there is a precedent in terms of participating and everyone being involved in that kind of stuff. So that exists as well.
And I'm sure the parents will have more ideas when they get official confirmation.
Craig.
One of the things we did, and it was quite successful, is develop a magazine, a brochure, a book, a magazine, basically, and companies advertise in it, and then you distribute them throughout the city. And we actually, that's probably our biggest fundraiser for both the boys and the girls when that happened, and it's quite successful. You sell half page or a quarter page, and then you put a biography about every person that's playing. And so I'll just leave that with you as a suggestion.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Other questions or comments from trustees? Seeing none, is there somebody that would like to make a motion? Craig.
I move that the board approve the trip to New Zealand for the LCI rugby women's team. And that as long as they follow all of the rules and regulations of, oh, there it is. I'll just say that's what I want, that the Lethbridge LCI Institute team to New Zealand in 2025 be approved by the board on the condition that all division policies and procedures are strictly followed, and with the understanding that future travel advisories and or vaccination requirement may affect the trip's ability to proceed.
Any
And
further?
I'm happy that I can read it without glasses.
I know. I was like, oh, he just had surgery on his eyes. So I was like, I don't know if you can read. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, those in favor and those opposed, and that's carried. Enjoy your trip.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And next up is Chinook, if you'd like to join us at the front. So same thing, I'll get you to introduce yourselves and the process will be the same. So if you can go ahead without pressing buttons and getting beeps. There you go.
Great. Okay, so I'm Joshua Moret. My name's up there, and this is Brody Turnbull and Nick Stratt, and we're 3 teachers at Chinook High School, and we are seeking approval for a 9-day trip to Iceland, departing basically same time, April 18th, so spring break. No missed school time for the trip. We've got some finalized numbers. It's about 5,900 Canadian dollars, including insurance. Yeah. Sorry, you'll forgive me. It's my first time doing this. We've planned a trip. Sort of, it's actually very customized. All the trips so far from the school, at least in recent memory for years, have been social studies based trips. We've planned a trip that's science based and focuses on, we have some visits to geothermal plants, hot springs, waterfalls, lots of outdoor time, very little in the way of long bus rides or anything. So, maximum bus ride that we have is about a 4-hour bus ride. In Iceland, we fly into Reykjavik. Some of the activities, highlights of the activities that we have there, whale watching, Northern Lights. We will be in either in Reykjavik or up in a town called Akureyri, which is a town of about 20,000 people. So we've done a lot of customizations to the trip. We also did a lot of work. Unfortunately, the truth of the matter right now is just that travel overall has gone up a ton in price from what it was. I think the last trip out of our school was $5,700, and we worked really hard to get that down. We were originally looking at a different trip at a slightly lower price point, but with all the browbeating and badgering and all the things that we could do, this is as low as really you can travel anywhere at this point, and so that's difficult. We are going with World Strides Explorica, which is a company that people haven't really traveled with a bunch yet. Most of them have gone through EF Tours, but we talked to people who've run trips before, most recently, and they haven't been super impressed with the customer service and some of the stuff along there. And so we've been sort of building this relationship. This trip's been about 2 years in the making. We've been bumped a couple times for other trips coming out of our school. So hoping that it would be a really strong opportunity for our kids. And we have a lot of kids. We have about 42 kids right now that have expressed interest there that are in the teens group. We have a parent meeting scheduled to go over things with them. We've sent home information so parents are aware of what the cost looks like. Some big benefits to Iceland. One of the few countries in the world right now that's green on Canada travel list. no strange diseases, no extra vaccinations required, no scary things there. Low crime, and great group of kids that were we've met with them a couple of times. Great group of kids that are looking at being a part of it. Lots of kids really interested in the science aspect. So that was a big part of our planning, was sort of getting that feedback from our own student body and saying, what do you want to do if we do a trip?
Christine.
I just want to ask you a question about your Travel Protection Plus plan, because I don't know if you're paying extra for that, but the school division has a student blanket travel accident program that is cancel for whatever, because I was looking at what's in here, cancel for whatever reason, all that other stuff. So you may not need to, if you're paying extra for this, you may not need to. And it also causes issues when there's two sets of insurance. Theirs will always be first pair. And so sometimes it can be difficult if you're versus going through our insurance. So I don't know if you're paying extra, but you don't have to. And if you don't have, I think we've sent it out to schools, but if you need that stuff, just email me and I'll send it to you.
Awesome, thank you. We pushed for them to include it because we've done a lot of legwork with them on pricing.
Yeah, they're getting tipping and bus, all the external costs. Sorry. I kind of took the helm on the trying to badger Kirby every once in a while, our travel person. Yeah, he's included a lot of costs because, like Josh was saying, we're trying to hit as many kids as possible, and the demographic of our school was asking for a science-based trip. So they're going to include insurance or include what is normally the tipping for bus drivers and tour guides. Yeah, it took a lot of conversation back and forth, but I think we've met them at their lowest price that they can go with.
Yeah, and obviously looking at pricing, we have talked a lot about fundraising. Obviously, we're pretty sensitive to that. I have a couple kids in high school myself. I have 5 kids in different schools here in the city. And the truth of the matter, it's tough, right? If we're fundraising and that gets split amongst all the kids, if we have 42 kids going, I mean, it almost doesn't matter what you do, that money per kid is pretty low. We have done some stuff, though. We have reached out to some outside organizations. We've also talked to wellness in our school about specifically funding students that otherwise wouldn't be able to go on an individual basis, as opposed to spreading, all of those dollars across the whole group. We also, I'm a sales guy from way back before I was ever a teacher. Spent about 8 years in sales, and so we've drafted some stuff for students to send out to local businesses to really sell it, and said that with some donated funds, we would feature them in our daily newsletter or our weekly newsletter that goes out to all the parents, which is about 12 parents of 1,200 students. So hoping to get some direct corporate funding and try to use that in the way that it goes the furthest for kids, as opposed to just dividing it up however many ways. I know we probably won't get 42 kids total, but however many we have. We do have a female chaperone as well that, I mean, fingers crossed, and we managed to get 24. It's 1 to 6, same as the other trip, that we'd be able to have her on board as well. And if it goes up from there, just bringing on some more people. We've had a lot of interest from teachers that haven't had a chance to do trips anywhere. We told our spouses that we didn't want to anchor anyone's wrath. So that's kind of a nicer thing about this trip, is that we are just sticking to staff for chaperones, so that more people from the school can be a part of it and be able to be part of that trip.
Questions from the board? Seeing no questions, would somebody like to make a motion? Christina.
I move that the Chinook High School trip to Iceland in April 2025 be approved by the board on the condition that all division policies and procedures are strictly followed, and with the understanding that future travel advisories and/or vaccination requirements may affect the trip's ability to proceed.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, those in favor? And that's carried. Congratulations. Enjoy your trip.
Thank you very much. We sure appreciate it.
That's okay. So we're back to 8.2 in your board packages. I'll give Mike just a second to get his pages together.
Yep.
Perfect. So I'll turn it over for donations and support.
Yeah, so again, standard routine. We are just so fortunate in Lethbridge School Division. A great donation from Panago Pizza North. Certainly very strong supporters of the schools and the division, and certainly greatly appreciate it. I know Cole Agnes Davidson appreciates it, and we appreciate it as a division. So yeah, big thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Next is acknowledgements of excellence.
Okay, and as always, I'll hit a couple highlights, and if you have questions, certainly happy to answer those as best I can. But you know, a couple things that actually stood out in both these entries this month. You know, Park Meadows, you take a look at all the different things like their positivity, respect, independence, determination, and empathy guidelines. I mean, just a great way to really work with young kids about some things that are very important and can help them be successful in life. Later down, they're talking about the work that they've done with our Indigenous education team and how to support their community. Then they talk about Breakfast Club and the great work that they've done and supporting over 75 students that can start their day with a nutritional breakfast. You know, and then you look at, I mean, if you go to the, just scroll down a little bit more, please, Kristen, thank you. That kind of second last paragraph, you know, when surveyed, our students expressed their love for learning across all core subjects, fine arts, and you've got drumming, dance, drama, guitar, ukulele, like, what a great opportunity. You know, and you can just, I don't need to read through the entire list, but it's very clear that we do a number of things for our students to support them in the classroom, but also to give them those opportunities to explore multiple areas of passion. And you never know, maybe someone will pick up a passion for the ukulele and a lifelong excitement for that. And I sure hope that they do. You know, so I think that's a theme that sticks out, certainly something that sticks out at Park Meadows, and just the way they support their students, and they do so many things to make sure the kids have the best experience possible. And then Churchill, if you look through it, a lot of what Churchill talked about is there's a lot of extracurricular stuff. So athletics, obviously, fine arts, those sorts of things. And I do want to put in a quick plug for the math club. I did get an opportunity to go visit math club. It was after town hall. They had invited me to come, so I came over and hung out with them for a little bit at lunch. I have 2 math club pins that I wear proudly, and so whenever I can, I try and show those off to Tracy and Churchill. But I mean, again, just, you know, what a great example of something that's not necessarily classroom, although math is related to the classroom, but it's outside of the classroom. And a lot of it is just about students, staff connecting and finding some areas of passion. And you can see that in Churchill's submission here, just so many opportunities for kids to demonstrate their skills and their ability. And again, follow those areas of passion. Some of them are directly related to curricular. Some of them are a little more extracurricular. So that's it from me on those. Once again, very proud of the work that our schools do, and I really appreciate both of these submissions this month.
Questions or comments? Seeing, oh, go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, I was just, in reading that, I'm just wondering, are the IB program, the students that got accepted right into med school and some of their, I can't remember where I read that. Maybe it was, but I noticed that some of them had been accepted into, yeah. And is that the IB program that they're taking? Because that's quite remarkable to come right out of high school and be accepted into a med school.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure if they're in IB or not. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that, but I couldn't tell you for sure. I know, well, to put another math club plug, I was talking to some of the math club students and they were talking very much about this experience and those opportunities that they had. So,
Yeah.
but Craig, it's a great example of, because that is a big deal to be direct, accepted right out of high school and to get those opportunities. So, yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Just want to say that certainly to see more of our schools highlighted is wonderful and fabulous, and they do amazing work. And these kids that are coming out, or I was able at ICE Scholarship evening showcase to be able to speak to some of these young students that did get accepted for their post-secondary, and they're remarkable students. So, yeah. Perfect. So next is our Education Week.
Great, and I don't need to spend too much time on it. It was last week. I did want to say a big thank you to all the trustees who were able to get involved and get out to our schools and really demonstrate that appreciation for Education Week. Thank you so much for doing that. It's very, very important and certainly appreciated. And it was a great celebration. Lots of opportunity to promote it on the website or in social media, and I think the opportunity for trustees to get out to schools and show their appreciation was wonderful. So thank you.
Thank you. And next is calendar of events.
Yeah, like it's May next week.
No, it's
that
not.
is shocking to me. April has flown by. I need a pause button to get some things done. So yeah, we're into May next week, and it's going to be a full sprint till the end of June. So if there's anything that needs to be added, let us know. But that's some of the highlights for me.
I have a couple of questions. So one is on the 21st is the public budget presentation. So that needs to be on there for the 21st at 1 o'clock. I will have community conversations, but I'll share that after. And then on the 7th, we have the board budget committee. There might be some adjustment to the time of that, but it also has tagged in there the committee of the whole. And as a board, we all have committee of the whole in our calendars as May 14th marked off. So May 14th is actually committee of the whole, not part of the May 7th. So yes.
Kristen, you got all that? Yeah. Okay.
All right. And Craig.
And Public School Board Association, their spring convention starts on the 30th.
I know there's a few of us going to that. So Christina.
Because it's a board committee, am I allowed to say the ICE scholarship deadline is May 6th?
Okay, we're good with the calendar events? Perfect. So we will move on. There's no presentations. And next up is policy review. And I know, Christine, you were the one that chaired that meeting. So I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. For today's board meeting, we have two policies to discuss and approve. The first is policy 601.2.1, school year. Just pulling out my notes. All right. So this one is coming to the board, not with a decisive direction from the committee. We had wholesome conversation about the items within this policy, and the committee at the end of the day decided to pass this on, and I will share the feedback that was spoken about at the committee, and then as a board we can decide how we would like to move forward. So policy 602.2.1, school year, is the policy wherein the school year calendar shall outline the start and end dates for teachers and students, professional learning and preparation days for teachers, holidays, and other designated breaks and parent-teacher interview dates. So that is the purpose of the policy. So going through the conversation on this policy, the first thing we did is we discussed the website and stakeholder feedback. So all our policies are now going onto our community engagement website where stakeholders are able to see what policies are under review and provide their feedback. And what's really great is this feedback is given to our policy members, our policy committee members. So we reviewed that. So for this particular policy, we had 24 items of feedback to review. Now, when we moved through the policy, we made changes to for regulation number 1. We had discussion on hours of instruction and how they coincide with the guide to education. On regulation 2.3, this was the addition, or the recommendation is to provide for a non-operational day in recognition of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And the discussion around that on this item was, in the past 3 years, it has been a non-operational day. Concern brought forward is, for some parents, a non-operational day brings challenges with acquiring daycare. And when we looked at the feedback given, we had parents / caregivers provide responses, as well as staff. And it was pretty much split right down the middle of individuals who would support it being a non-operational day and individuals who wish it to be the same and give opportunities for students to have opportunity to recognize this day within school, as well as be sensitive to childcare issues that families may have. Yes.
Sorry, just before you move on from TNR, for Christine Lee, have any of our settled contracts, so like the QP 290 or the ATA, do they have any provisions in their collective agreement for Truth and Reconciliation Day or a day in lieu or anything like that?
ATA does not have that.
Okay.
But the trying to remember if we did it with 290 or not. I know with the 2043 in the memorandum of agreement, we have a day for truth and reconciliation, and it would be based on a day, non-instructional day. If it lands on an instructional day, then it would be a day in lieu.
Yeah, so I just was going to make the point that if those things are happening with our employee groups, there's just not a lot of wiggle room we have, especially if it has been incorporated into a collective agreement. We can't operate outside that. So just a thought.
But you're saying it's not.
Yeah, it's based on if it's it's an instructional day, it falls on the instructional day, and we don't make it a non-instructional day, then they get a day in lieu. But if it make it a non-instructional day where we're not in school or people are off, then they would get that day off, right, with pay.
Yeah.
Okay, for regulation 2.0.
When we talk about non-operational days, that would be PD, or is that what we're talking about? Like, I'm a little confused on non-operational days. There's instructional days, which I understand. Kids are in the classroom being taught. Non-operational days, what are those days?
Jenny, are you answering that? Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so generally speaking, so yes, you've got a regular instructional day. PD days would be called an operational day, but students aren't there. And then non-operational days are, generally speaking, no students, no staff.
So can you give us an idea of what a non-operational day would be in our division?
Yeah, Remembrance Day, for example, is often a non-operational day. I mean, it's tied to a holiday, obviously, but yeah, those would typically be. I'm trying to think, actually, I can give you an example where it's not tied to a holiday. If you looked at that Family Day week, those 2 days in between, you got Family Day, then you got Teachers Convention on the Thursday and Friday. You could characterize those 2 days as non-operational days because they're not tied to a holiday. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And the other question I have is, in June, isn't there a day set aside for the Indigenous people? I can't remember but I know that we couldn't have tests on a certain day because it was an Indigenous Day. And I'm just thinking, that is not Truth and Reconciliation Day? Okay.
June 21st
Yeah.
is National Indigenous Day, People's Day, and it's not a holiday,
Okay.
but it is a day that we would cherish and respect and not
Yeah.
be
you
having
don't have tests
hosting
on those
exams
days.
on that day.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Christine. Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, Jenny.
Can I just clarify? You had just mentioned in the last 4 years we have had a non-operational day, and so I just wanted to clarify. I think in practice this has been in place. It just hasn't been in policy. But with it not being policy, last year September 30th landed on a Saturday, and so we did not have a non-operational day in lieu of. And so that's the change that you're seeing is when it lands on a weekend, we would then have another day in lieu of. Is that correct?
Mike, would that be an operational decision?
I believe this past year we did provide a day in lieu. It was just provided in December through pay, but teachers are different than support staff. So teachers wouldn't get pay in lieu. That's just part of they get assigned a certain number of days, whereas support staff is a little different. That your understanding, Tyler?
If it falls in my understanding is certainly that going forward, if it falls on what would be considered a non-operational day, like a weekend or something like that, that there would be a day in lieu. I believe that is what is being brought forward now by working groups and also being put into their collective agreements. So that, yeah, if it falls on a Sunday, there's either pay for it or another day off in lieu.
Go ahead, Christine.
And one more item on 2.3 for feedback. One item of feedback also received was if we're not listing every day that is non-operational, that is a holiday, why are we naming the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation? So that was just part of the feedback. Moving on to 2.4 and then 2.6. There was split feedback on the proposed amendments to the names of the breaks. So the names have been moved from provide a 2-week Christmas break that begins after the last Friday prior to Christmas Eve to a winter break. And then now the winter break has been taken out and it's just to provide a 2-week break that begins after the last Friday prior to Christmas Eve. And then 2.6, taking out spring and Easter, provide for a 10-day break beginning on Good Friday. So there was a lot of debate back and forth about the support of removing and or keeping the words Christmas and Easter. Some conversation was around if the days are still anchored to Christmas Eve and Good Friday. Why do we need to change the names of the holidays? Other feedback was this policy isn't about the names of the break, it is about the timeline of the break. And so are the names necessarily important here? Feedback from the majority of parents that responded to our online feedback were supportive of keeping the names within this policy, as well as feedback from our admin committee. Regulation 2.7, suggestions were given to change interviews from afternoon to evening to accommodate working parents. So conversation around parent-teacher interviews. And we have put out to receive admin feedback regarding kindergarten interviews and the renaming of parent-teacher interviews. Regulation 6, we added approval for the following calendar year shall normally occur within January of the current calendar year. And this came from a request from parent feedback on our online form. So now, as I said earlier, no no final decisions have been made from the policy committee as to whether or not to include 2.3, provide a non-operational day in recognition of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, as well as 2.4 and 2.6. So on behalf of the committee, I'm bringing this to the board for discussion and decision.
So I will move it to the floor. Go ahead, Jenny.
Can I ask a question around that piece of the Truth and Reconciliation Day and that being named, and your feedback you brought forward about why are we naming this one and not other ones? Is I recognize that one of the differences with this holiday is that provincially this isn't being recognized. Do we have a similar situation? I can foresee a need to name this one because of that reason, because it isn't being recognized provincially by the government. And I'm curious, is it unique in that regard, or is there another situation like that? Does anyone know that?
No. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, Tyler.
I was just going to say, if you wanted to get away from names, you could also just say in this, in recognition of the September 30th federal holiday, because it is a federal holiday. It's just not provincial. So if you wanted to take names out, you could. Now, that being said, that's another whole conversation about whether or not you want names present in the thing or not. I don't think names are an issue. That's my personal opinion. But you could certainly get around that. If the issue is we're naming one thing but not naming others, you can certainly get around that just by calling it the September 30th federal holiday.
Jenny, you need to, okay.
Yeah, I could weigh in on it. I'm not sure I'm necessarily reflecting everybody's perspective accurately, but I can sort of give you some thoughts on that because it is something we discussed. I had a bit of a tough time because really what you're looking for is a holiday that's accepted by some, but doesn't have to be accepted by everybody. Easter Monday would actually be a good example, but we already have break, so it really has never been an issue. Another one would be, and I apologize because I used to know this well and I just don't know the stats well, but I think Heritage Day in August might be similar as well, that it's not mandated. Yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't think of off the top of my head an example that falls in our school year that we have to. I believe it is in Alberta, because yeah, we had that same debate and we Googled it, and I'd have to re-Google it. Yeah, because no, we had that same conversation. So yeah, it does, I'm not sure of a precedent that falls within the school year for that, because that does make it trickier. And certainly from a school calendar creation perspective, it's always helpful to have guidance. That's one of the things I like about this. It's got some very clear guidance. Like when you do the calendar, you can kind of go, okay, I got to do this, got to do this, got to do this, got to do this. So that is helpful.
Andrea?
I'm very much in support for having a non-operational day for Truth and Reconciliation. And I just, to honor that day, I just wonder if we need to make it clear that if it did fall on a weekend, that then there would be a Monday off. So it's clear in the policy. And regarding the others, I looked at many calendars from divisions around us, and the 9 statutory holidays that Alberta has are listed, whether they fall within time off or not. So, in keeping with what they're doing, it'd be nice to have our statutory holidays named in those edges of the calendar. And, I very much honor that newcomers to Canada, I want to learn all about Ramadan and Eid Day. And for me, it's more important where these breaks come around the Friday prior to Christmas Eve, and starting on Good Friday than what they're called. But then when we look at this, will we call them break 1 and 2 and 3? Like what will we call the breaks? So when people are talking about it, this break or this break or this break, but still honoring all newcomers to Canada and all of the holidays that we want to learn from them. So the placement is appreciated that they're around traditional holidays, but also honoring our newcomers. But I don't know if that helps about what will we call the holidays? Is that important, or we just call them this break that starts before Christmas? I think the placement's the most important. And just while I am talking, in Regulation 1, when it says each school year shall provide a minimum of 1,000 hours for instruction for high school students and a minimum of 950 hours for instruction for students in grades 1 through 9, should we be including kindergarten as 475 hours? Because it is within our mandate since, well, I guess 1982, actually. So it'd be nice to have that there as well. And I appreciate that you're going back for feedback for the interviews, so that would be safely within policy.
Craig.
Yeah, this is for Christine Light. Question. You said it in the feedback that a lot of the parents would like to see the interviews in the evening. Is that correct?
No, it wasn't a lot of parents said it within the feedback. It was comments around the table. It was feedback that it would be easier for working parents to have more interview time in the evenings. Yeah.
And that would include like our QP reps and our teacher and our administration reps. That conversation at the policy.
They were involved in that conversation. Yeah. Yes.
That's like I think we should make more effort to put our interviews in the evening, because I think there's more availability for parents to come and see. To have it in the morning or in the late afternoon would be fine, afternoon and evening. So I have a problem with having interviews during the daytime, personally. As a former teacher, I would rather have them in the evening, because I know that I'm going to reach more parents than in the morning. The second thing is, I still believe that we should incorporate, because there was some feedback that a number of parents still wanted Christmas and Easter written into our policy. And I would just say that I'm in agreement with that. If you went to some of the other countries, they don't make any mention of our holidays. And so sometimes we give away some of our own history in the hopes that these other people, but they were fine with it, and they don't mind it. And I mean, it doesn't discount their beliefs or holidays. It's just that I think a number of parents have indicated that they would like to see that stay in our policy. So I would like to keep it in our policy.
I've been able to be at a few meetings where this has certainly been discussed, and hearing the feedback. I know one other, you spoke about the admin committee as well as the parents. There was also the support staff, the QP 2843, that were wanting to keep the original language in there. For me, I feel that in January, the board sent this back to policy advisory to get feedback from our stakeholders, so that we could make a decision based on what we heard. And I think that what we heard, majority, was to keep the previous language in there. So, Tyler.
Two quick ones. Just first, in regard to the names, I'm fine with keeping the names in there. The reason the break exists is like the reason that there's a break around Christmas time is because it's Christmas. So I'm totally fine calling it Christmas break because that's the reason that it came about. So it's not just historical, everything else. That's the reason why there's a break is because it happens to be Christmas time. So I'm good with that. That's the reason it's there. The other one for Christine Lee again, I just had a question in regard to the Truth and Reconciliation 2.3, I guess it would be. Given that ATA, we don't have anything formally written with ATA in that, is it a problem to formally write something in here that's now going to apply to ATA? Like, is that something we should hold off on until we have a conversation with all of our employment groups?
Well, you mean the board can do anything they want outside of a collective agreement as long as you're not in violation of the collective agreement, right? So by giving you've given up a bargaining chip by doing this, right? So.
Okay. And the other question I would have on that is the way that it's worded, it says we're going to give a non-operational day somewhere. I would think that we would need to keep the flexibility to say that you get paid. That with teachers, that again, it's a little convoluted with teachers because they're on salary. We have hourly staff, we have salary staff, so it's a different issue. But if we come in here and say this, it would apply to our hourly staff that we're only going to give them time off. It doesn't say here that we have the option to also just pay you in lieu because we couldn't fit the day in to the schedule, whatever the case may be.
Well, yeah, well, this, because it's written in as, because part of the calendar, you're basically saying you're going to build in a day somewhere in the calendar to give them off in the recognition. So you're at my reading of this, and I might be wrong, Mike and Robbie might know better, but by saying this, we're actually building into a calendar a day off for this.
Right, which I'm saying might cause an issue because if it falls on a Sunday, now we have to build that day in, but maybe it doesn't work. Like, I don't know.
Well, you can build the day in around the winter break or spring break.
That's my only other question / concern with that is the way it's worded. Does it pose a problem for doing a calendar when it falls on a non-operational day? And now we're saying that no matter what, we're going to give you an additional day off somewhere.
Craig and then Christina.
Well, I guess one of my concerns right now is that we're paying a consultant some money, and as a whole board, we're developing policies. So I find that this is sort of a oxymoron that we're discussing policy that maybe might not be a policy under when we start to review them as a board. So honestly, I don't think we should do anything with this policy until the board has gone through with our consultant, Mr. Steele, and looked at the policies, either changed or revised or whatever, and it would save us a lot of time. And I think that that could go for a number of these things. So I just say, let's not make a decision today. Let's let the board and Mr. Steele do their work that we are paying for.
Christina.
Okay, so certainly I brought it to the table originally, so I just want to make sure I provide some feedback. So on the names, I can see where we're going. If we don't change it, I will live with it, obviously. But I want to be clear about a couple things. So right now we have our breaks around Easter and we have around Christmas. That is the basis of the argument for many people, that's the title of those breaks. What any government selects as national holidays is not an arbitrary decision. This is not a religious country. There are many religious celebrations which found the basis of the establishment of this country, both through settlement and through Indigenous cultures. And making the assumption that any break will arbitrarily always be around a religious holiday is like an assumption that we don't need to make. That being said, if we stay with Christmas and Easter break, then in the policy, then I will, yeah, live with it. That's fine. I will say operationally, we use winter and spring on the last many calendars that I have seen as a person both in the community and on this board. And not even all school divisions use, for example, Easter as their break. It is legitimately a spring break. Sometime in the spring, typically in a more predictable pattern, because Easter is actually notoriously unpredictable, like not unpredictable, we know when it is, but it's not, sometimes it's in March, sometimes it's in April, it's all over the place. Sometimes the stretch until Easter break is a long time. So I just want to sort of name that is an assumption we can't and shouldn't be making, and just want to question that. Further to that, that's not what that break is for everybody, right? The pretty much only unifying piece about that is that we're experiencing that season, or it's in that month, for example. So in some school divisions, you'll see March break because it's always going to be in March. The breaks are there because we've decided they're there. We have that authority, and so we have decided that. I also need this board to be considerate of how we approach this, and how we take some of the feedback that we've received. Easter and Christmas are not Canadian culture exclusively. They are traditions that are part of a specific religious background, shared by many, many people in Canada, and are part of the many settlement communities that have made this country, right? There are even many Indigenous communities that celebrate Christmas because of the same settlement history. But many people use that time for other meaningful holidays that are around that time. And it is not exclusionary to not name something a certain name when you still get that time off, right? Let's say we change the name and we still put it around Easter and Christmas. Those communities still have dedicated time dedicated to their specific holiday. No one is taking that away from them, and no one is discounting the massive cultural impact of those holidays on our community. All it is asking is that we maybe broaden our scope, that it's not just even newcomers that are celebrating other holidays or not celebrating holiday at all, for example. It is many longtime Canadians, is many Indigenous communities, Canadians, non-Canadians of all kinds, for many, many generations, do not necessarily celebrate those holidays. So that's my point on the names, but I can tell where the vote is going on that, so I can move on. It's not, in this case, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, the feedback was provided by this survey, but also by 6,500 witnesses as part of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. This is an ask that was made as part of a massive countrywide effort to come into some type of reconciliation. This is, frankly, to me, one of the smallest asks on the list. And one of the asks that is, while it was asked of the federal government, who very promptly put it into place, was not put into place by our government, but that does not exclude us as another governing body who is elected to fulfill our obligation to those calls to action. So I just want to remind everybody about the thousands of other pieces of feedback that were provided in that multi-year effort of receiving feedback about why we would need that day. And so I continue to be in full support of a non-operational day, so that all people can participate in the reflection that that day demands. Yeah, so thank you.
Jenny.
Thank you, everyone, for the discussion, and Christina for that thoughtfulness and call to be thoughtful, and appreciate that. I would like to represent that I agree, I'm in agreement with the idea of keeping the words Christmas and Easter, and I recognize value in, we've put an effort to add. We've put an added effort to recognize holidays and holidays of a lot of different cultures and a lot of different religions, because there is value in recognition, and I can understand the feedback requesting that recognition, and in having that remain in there. As far as the non-operational day in recognition for the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, I have been very pleased with the way that the division has honored that day to date. I struggle a little bit with the idea that when that day falls on a weekend or on a day that is typically not an operational day, that we are giving a non-operational day somewhere in the calendar. I struggle to see that honoring the intention or in any way meeting truth and reconciliation. If they then just receive a paid day off in December, I mean, I didn't even know that happened. You know, on my end, I'm not sure that that accomplishes the intention of honoring truth and reconciliation. And I would like to see something that accomplishes that more effectively.
Andrea.
I went back through the calendars to find where the transition had happened. So in 2019 to 2022, our breaks were called Christmas and Easter. Heading into 2020 to 2021, they became winter and Easter. This is the first year that they've been called winter and spring, that the word Easter had left the calendar. And I mean, just going back to the 9 Alberta stat holidays, if they were shown in the edges, that could give them some honor, and the winter and spring names could honor that we have more and more new Canadians who have other holidays, and for me, again, the placement is really important that they're around Christmas and Easter. So just coming to some way to make honor of the stats, but also honor of new Canadians was just a thought. So I don't know if it is ready to be voted on or if it needs to go back. It seems to have so much more work.
Craig.
I would move that we table 601.2.1 and 600.2 until the board has finished reviewing all of the policies with David Steele.
Christine.
I'm responding to Craig's motion. I think if we knew at the beginning of this year that we were going to move forward with the consultant, and as a policy advisory committee, there was conversation of what policy review would look like. And we decided as a committee on behalf of the board that we would continue with the work because right now these are our policies and we don't know what we don't have the future framework. And I think even if the framework will change. The framework is going to change, but I think these are still important conversations to have because the meat that's within these policies is going to move with the work that happens. And I think these conversations showcase where we as a board sit with these issues. And I think it's important to have these conversations. So I would not be in support of tabling this because I think if you table this policy discussion, then you may as well just table the policy advisory committee. And until changes happen, what we have now is what we have. And so we need to do the work for the structure that we have, and we need to be willing to have the conversations, and sometimes the hard conversations, and to decide what direction and how we want our policies to reflect this board. And Andrea, in response to your pondering of should we send this back to the policy advisory committee, the policy advisory committee does not want this. The policy advisory committee wants the board to make a decision on these things. We had a lengthy conversation on this. It was split down the middle. I know, thank you, Allison, for reminding me of the QB. wasn't in this notes, it was in a different note. And so we did have stakeholder feedback. And it's interesting looking at, and feedback is essential, feedback is important. And I always come with, is the feedback fully representative, right? And that's the challenge. How do we get fully representative feedback from all of our stakeholders? And that's something that our board needs to continue to move forward with. So I would not be in support of Craig's motion.
Jenny.
I would echo that we've gathered stakeholder feedback and some effort, a lot of effort has gone into conversation, and our representatives at the Policy Advisory Committee have put in the effort to be representatives of that feedback, and I would seek to honor that work and that feedback, and agree with the sentiment that I understand it's a little bit redundant that we are working on policies and working on policies in two different spaces, but I can see that work being collaborative. And if we can polish this off, if we can make it more polished, or we can gather new or a fresh gathering of stakeholder feedback, we have something a little bit more valuable to take into that process with our advisor. And so I do recognize value in that work that has already happened with this policy, and in these at this final stage, I think is the wrong time to interrupt it. I can recognize a conversation where we discuss, what is our strategy moving forward. But as far as this one goes, the work has been done, and I think it is time to vote on it. But I can appreciate that sentiment, as well as appreciate I wasn't able to be there for the last meeting, and thank you, Christine. But having been somewhat a part of that effort, I recognize the work that has gone into it and would like to honor it.
Craig.
Thank you for the feedback. I've been on the policy review committee, and I do appreciate all the work they do. And I know that if we table it, we are not ignoring what the policy review committee has done. And also that we would involve them in any of the policies that we renew or redevelop, or whatever you want to use the word. So I fully intend to use that committee for feedback, as well as on the website. My point is that we've taken almost 30 minutes to discuss one policy, and we're going to take another for that policy. And we could just table them and then talk about them with the feedback that we've received already from the policy committee in putting forward our new revised, whatever you want to call it, policies. All I'm saying is that we would have to change this policy if the majority, and I'm getting the feeling that the majority want it changed, but have we really talked about it in depth as a board, looking at how we can make it work for everybody? That's the only reason that I would table it. I appreciate all the work that they've done, and I will appreciate the work that they will do in the future, but to me, let's move on.
Okay. Not seeing any further comments or questions, so Craig's motion is to table these two policies to the policy consultant. Those in favor? And those opposed? And that's defeated. So we are back to the policy, that first one that Christine has brought forward. Tyler, go ahead.
I do agree with some of the things Craig's saying, but unfortunately, I also agree that tabling it, let's just get it done as best we can. In regard to the names of the things, is for the people that don't want a specific name associated with it, my question is it offensive to have it there? Because to me, it's not at all. But if we called it a winter/Christmas break or Christmas/winter break, is that a problem? Because I think that solves pretty much every issue myself, but I'm a little more easygoing as far as the names go, and I get that. But I would suggest that if there's any interest in that, that we could name them that way, so that it's so if you when you see it, you consider that a winter break, great. The winter break is there, and if you consider that a Christmas break, great. Christmas is there. That would be my next step in this. See if there's any appetite for that, and go from there.
Okay, discussion on that. So you would want winter/Christmas and spring/Easter. Okay. Jenny?
Do we need to put it to motion and then make friendly amendments? Oh, I see. I just thought.
Jenny, I can't hear you.
I want me to move it? I can't really move it. That's a lot. I don't know. I don't know what. Let's just have discussion, because that would be.
Let's have a discussion.
To amend
and then,
all those, it would be an issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, before you make a motion, we could amend and then make a motion based on amendment. So if Tyler goes to the effort, yeah. So if Tyler goes to the effort of amending some of these pieces, what are people's thoughts on that? See nods. Jenny?
I'm just questioning process. If it hasn't been put to motion yet, can it be amended by Tyler?
Yeah, we can.
Making a friendly amendment to what?
No, we're amending what is, he's not going to make a friendly amendment.
Oh, I see. So you're just going to amend the document and then we will move.
And then he would.
Okay,
he
thank
would
you.
look for a motion to approve as amended.
You want my opinion on having both Christmas and winter in there? Sure. Basically.
You're like, okay.
Well, it is a good compromise. One of the conversations that happened at our PAC was this policy does not define how this holiday, how these breaks, I should say, how these breaks are named within the calendar. So that was some of the feedback. So whether we call it a break, a Christmas break, a winter break, it doesn't define how it's presented in the calendar. I think we have to, I think it's important to honor the feedback that we did receive. The word Christmas is important. I think we do need to tether it, however, with our policy, our priorities of inclusion and ensuring that use and our policies are also inclusive of all students and staff and their and student families. And I think winter with Christmas can do both, and I could be satisfied with both. And I would say the same for spring/Easter. Just bring it into one conversation.
Yeah. And I think that just to continue on that conversation, it was very marked that item 2, so all the bullet points in that, it's about putting marker places within how we form a calendar. This is not about what things are named, and same with the National Truth and Reconciliation Day. It is not about whether they get a day at a different time in the year. That would come in another area of our policy. Andrea?
I like your idea as well. I like the idea of the winter/Christmas, spring/Easter to encompass new Canadians and their beliefs as well. While we're talking about it, would we then say Family Day break? And And then before we put it forward, just wanted some more clarity around provide for a non-operational day in reconciliation of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. If this day falls on a weekend, this day would be honored on the following Monday. Like, I just want to make that clear so that it's within that time period to honor it.
Tyler.
I don't think we can say that just because we don't know what the calendar is going to look like, and we don't know that we can necessarily provide that day no matter what. It handcuffs us, I think, and I agree with your point, but I think it's an issue as far as flexibility in our calendar goes, and our calendar is. For those that may not know, our calendar is actually very difficult because you have to start by a certain date, you have to end by a certain date. The way diplomas fall means you can only do this, and you can't move a lot of things. So it is more complicated than it seems just by throwing out a calendar. So I wouldn't want to handcuff us like that.
For me, in regards to the day in recognition of National Truth and Reconciliation Day, I do think it's important that we acknowledge the calls to action, and that's something as a division that we encourage the work that we do with our students, and those are important pieces. And I certainly struggled with, there's places in our policy that we can stand for what's important in that day. And I think it's also important, and obviously not part of this motion, but is that as governors and hearing the struggles from our families, is that when we consider it a non-operational day, and some of our local facilities might consider it a stat holiday for their employees, such as daycares. We have students' parents that have no access to childcare when we're declaring it a non-operational day. And I get that we don't solve that for everybody, but I think in knowing that the calls to action are there, and the calls are on the federal government, I would actually also call on us to be advocating to our provincial government to classify it as a statutory holiday so that more of our students' families would be able to not find it as difficult as what they currently would be finding. And I know obviously that statement that I just made is outside of this policy and any motion that might come forward with it, but I think that it's important that we recognize as governors the role that we can play in this when we hear from our community that our students have days off and our families are struggling. Our families are struggling to find the care that they need, and doing this, and I fully know why we're doing it on this day, but it just makes it so difficult for our families when there's not other options for what they're going to do on that day. So I think it's an acknowledgement that we need to make, and we need to do the steps that we can do as governors to advocate to the provincial government to also make that a statutory holiday. So Craig.
I'm wondering if we can split, if we can vote on 2.3 and 2.4 and 2.5 as part of it, because I would like to make a motion for 2.7 later. And I want one part of it done first, and then I'll make a motion on 2.7, which is changing the fall interviews to 2 evenings instead of an afternoon and a morning. I feel that I want to take care of the top 3 first and then talk about that one. So is it possible to divide it up?
We're at this point, we were thinking we might be able to have something amended. So can you amend it and see what feeling is? So what are you thinking for 2.7?
Well, I'll just change it to provide for 2 evenings for parent-teacher interviews in the fall.
to this. I'm wondering if that 2.7 says afternoon and morning, but I do know interviews do go into the evening. So perhaps could this be an operational decision of how and taking into individual schools and their contexts, what parents need, and just gathering the data from their parent communities of what would serve them best. I think I don't know that it would be responsible to completely erase the daytime opportunities, because there are parents where that is beneficial as well. So I don't want to just swing to the other side. I don't think that that would be responsible. So I would actually recommend that we just allow that to be an operational decision at this point, and to get the feedback of each school context.
Yeah,
Mike, Tyler, and then Christine.
sorry if you want me to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to provide some context, each school is a little bit different, but Craig, I think what you're suggesting here is those would then become instructional days and not days where students are not in. And so that does create some challenge. That is a big change to the calendar for sure. Interviews do happen in the evenings. Generally speaking, the schools will mix up. Generally speaking, that fall, particularly for elementaries, is we've got a mix of interviews and professional learning that happen those couple days. There's a bit of a block in October there. So, you know, I think we'd have to have a pretty good conversation about what that looks like and what the implications are. Some of which I can answer, some of which I can't. Definitely interviews happen in the evening, though. I can tell you that for sure. But I think it is a question how much and what's that split and those sorts of things.
I have Tyler, Christine Lee, and then Andrea. Okay, Tyler or Andrea, as I look at.
There are definitely parents who like to come in the morning and the afternoon, and the interviews do go well into the evening, and that frees up spaces for those parents to actually be able to access those by the parents who can come in the morning and the afternoon, having taken those times. Otherwise, you would really run out of time for the teacher to see the parents.
Craig, if you're going to make a motion, can I just
No.
I just want you to hold, because I know Kristen needs to
commenting
run upstairs and grab something.
I realize that when it says afternoon, that it goes into the evening. And I just, having had experience of both as a teacher, I preferred 2 afternoons going into the evening than a morning and then an afternoon going into the evening. And that's all I wanted. I understand that the afternoon ones go in the evening, so I'm not discounting that. I just want to make sure it's clear to the rest of the board that I understand that. And I also understand that if you went to that route, there would be some changes to the calendar.
Okay. We're almost at 5. Kristen needs to run and grab something before any motion is made. So go ahead, Tyler.
Okay. When Kristen returns after public forum, I was just hoping to get Christine Light to make a motion. As is, I have an amendment for all the 2s, which I will put forward after there's a motion on the floor, if that works, and then we can vote on the amendments and or friendly amendments to there. Fair enough?
Perfect. So we're good with that. Okay. So we have a 3-minute break while we wait for public forum and for Kristen to come back. Amber, you're welcome to come to the front, but we'll wait till we're on. I don't think we have started. Garrett, we're back on? Perfect. Okay, so it's 5 o'clock and we have our public forum time at this point. My understanding is there's nobody online to join us, but we do have Amber joining us in person. So thank you, Amber, for taking the time to join the public forum and present to the board. We appreciate public members coming forward to express a concern or perspective. The board will listen carefully to your presentation and carefully consider what you have said today. The board will be able to ask any clarifying questions and will provide a response in the near future. So you have 5 minutes. Christine Lee will be our timekeeper for that.
Hello. So I didn't have time to prepare anything today, but I'm here because I'm pretty disappointed in the response that I got from my forum last month. I have looked at the town hall summary again, and those bold points seem to be headings for the sub points beneath them. And in the governance section, that last point seems to be shoving a whole bunch of stuff in under the blanket of ideology. And I can understand that you all want to give the summary, the real quotes and the real comments that came back from folks. But I shouldn't have to come and explain to you what ideology is, and explain to you that you have a 7-year-old gender diversity policy and that it shouldn't be falling under ideology. And I can only assume that whoever compiled the information also heard terms besides ideology like woke, and maybe like groomer, and maybe even pedophile, because all of these terms are coming together on social media right now. And they're all describing a group of people who don't really subscribe to an ideology. In fact, gender diversity isn't the basis of any ideology that I'm aware of, and I have an honors degree in religious studies. Okay? So ideology itself tends to encompass a system of belief that is generally political or religious. And so I'd like you to change that language, or I'd like you to explain how you compiled the information. Because if you really are concerned with inclusion, which is supposed to be one of the core tenets of the Lethbridge School Division, public school division, by the way, then you're not really supporting the students with that kind of language. And I'm worried that you're not prepared for what's coming. I'm worried that the schools aren't prepared for what's coming. Because I think the walkouts that happen in the fall are going to be worse. There is a human rights legal team that is waiting in the wings for the government to pass this legislation, pass the policy into legislation. It is fully expected that that policy that they've announced is going to be fully legislated. And then we're going to be tied up in the courts. What happened at LCI last week when they had the assembly is that as kids were walking out, there were other kids telling kids from the GSA and kids that they know to be trans to kill themselves. This is the kind of language that is being used in high school. And it's only going to get worse. And I don't know if the school board and the school administrations are prepared for what's coming. And that's my concern, and that's my child's concern, is that next time when there is a walkout, things are going to get even worse. And I really believe that you have to have it on your radar. And I think this town hall summary, the town hall which happened almost directly after that policy announcement, And then the walkouts that happened almost directly after that. My experience at the town hall was that most of the people were there to talk about the gender policy. There was a huge amount of people, and literally was brought up at every table I was at. And I had people come to me and ask me about trans kids, and ask me about transgender and what it meant for the schools, which means that people aren't reading the policies that exist. And I mean, if you've read the policy, you know that kids can't change their name at school formally, right? We know this. There's no grooming happening at school. There's no time. Teachers don't have time for that. But I'm really concerned about safety in the fall. And I'm really concerned that this isn't a priority for you. And I think it would go a long way if that summary was changed so that it suited the rest of the document, because all of those bold points.
Sorry, Amber, your time's up, but thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Are there any clarifying questions? Tyler?
Sorry, Amber, I'm not fully sure exactly what it is you're looking for. You're looking for us, what your main concern is with the town hall, that we reclassify that part at the end so it's not being considered, so it's not being labeled as ideology. And you want, sorry, did you want something separated there? Different points, or sorry, I'm just trying to know, because I want to have an idea of what we can do to help the situation.
Thank you for the question. So virtually every point, there's about 5 points under each main heading. And each of those 5 points has a header and then 2 subpoints. And all of them throughout the document, the bolded header has something to do with the 2 subpoints. If it's policy, then there's 2 subpoints underneath. But the last one on the governance side is monitor ideological influence at school, or ideology in school. And then there's 2 opposing points about gender diversity, which it doesn't make any sense. It's not supportive. It's not inclusive. It's inflammatory language entirely. And if there are more points, then there should just be more points. If there are a whole bunch of parents who believe that it's an ideology, that's fine. But it shouldn't be ideology is the header for gender diversity, because gender diversity and acceptance of gender diversity in the Lethbridge School Division is actually a policy. It's an accepted policy of inclusion. It's not, it just doesn't jive. And I would like that changed, and I would also like you to have fall on your radar.
Okay. Thank you,
I'm
Amber.
really worried about it based on LCI.
Any other questions for clarification? Seeing none, on behalf of the board, thank you for your presentation. We appreciate public members coming forward to express a concern or perspective. You can be assured that the board will carefully consider what you have said today and provide a response in the near future. Thanks, Amber. You're welcome to stay and join us. Thanks, Amber. Okay, so I believe that Christine was going to make a motion, and then we have some amendments to that. Okay, go ahead.
I move that the board adopt the revisions to policy 601.2.1 school year as amended.
Just so I can clarify, as amended, you mean what's in this board package? Okay. Yes. And then Tyler is going to make some further amendments.
Yes.
Go ahead, Tyler.
I would like to propose some amendments to the amended policy. First being 2.3, and I would amend that to say, provide for a day in recognition of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Sorry, I'm going to take out day. Provide for recognition of the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. The reason for that is just because I'm not exactly sure how fitting in a non-operational day works. I believe that in practice, that is how we're handling it. And I believe in practice, that's kind of how we're going to do it going forward. But there are, I personally have some concerns around how this fits in with our collective agreements and whatnot. So that just allows us, gives us the flexibility to make sure that what to me, again, is the most important part is that we're recognizing truth and reconciliation that day. And then how we fit that in operationally, it gives us a little more flexibility to do that. And if the way things go, that may end up being exactly how it is incorporated into collective agreements and the way it goes with employees. But that's what I would say for that. And then for 2.4, provide for a 2-week Christmas/winter break. That begins, that would be the difference there. So just Christmas/winter. So I guess kind of the same, but with a slash in there. 2.5, I would just say, I would leave 2.5 as is actually. 2.6, provide for a 10-day Easter/spring break, beginning on Good Friday, and it is there. And then in 2.7, I would amend that to say, provide for 2 half-days for parent-teacher interviews in the fall and a half-day for parent-teacher interviews in the spring. In here, trying to specify whether or not it's morning or afternoon or evening, I think can cause some operational problems. As long as we're saying that there's a half day, and different schools may, depending on their communities, have a better way of doing it. So I think it gives us a little more flexibility there, but we still know what we're doing. And I think there would be, anyone who's watched this or is taking this forward would be that there's some encouragement from the board to ensure that there's an opportunity for evenings for parents to be, who are working, to be able to have an opportunity to do that in the evenings. I think that's it.
Andrea? We won't vote on the amendments until we have some conversation. Yes, yes. We need to discuss. Andrea, you were hand down. Okay, Christine and then Jenny.
Mine's just a clarifying question. For 2.3, can you state the sentence wholly as you're wanting to present it? Because I'm hearing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Provide for recognition of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation.
Okay. Thank you.
Jenny.
What would that mean? Provide for recognition of the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. In practice, how would that be interpreted? What would that mean, that statement?
Well, that would be up to the school division and how they operate that as to what is done. Historically, in the last little bit, what that is we provide for a we provide for a non-operational day in recognition of it. That is historically what we've been doing, but like I said, I'm not entirely sure how what the ramifications are of putting that into a policy are at this time with our different employee groups. This just gives us the flexibility to do that, but make sure we're not in contradiction to something that we've got.
Christine.
So if I read the current amendment, provide for a non-operational day in recognition of national truth and reconciliation, and someone smarter than me can correct me if I'm wrong. The way I read it is, in the calendar, if truth and reconciliation falls on a Monday through Friday, one of those days would be considered non-operational in order to do it. If it falls on a Saturday or Sunday, wouldn't matter. We wouldn't have to give a day or lieu the way this reads. In a collective agreement, quite often, and in the one we're going to discuss, they actually get a day in lieu. If it falls on if they're, like they get a day in lieu if it's an operational day, they get a day in lieu and we have to find another day or pay them. So if even on a weekend we have to pay them. So that's the difference between in a collective agreement versus just in trying to make it work in a calendar and saying we have no school that day. So am I correct on that? Mike, I don't know.
I'm not sure what you meant there. If
I don't know that you
worded
cleared
here,
anything
falls
up.
on if if it falls on a Sunday, we're still going to have to provide a non-operational day at some other time.
I'll read this as being that way.
That's how I read it, because it says provide for a non-operational day. Oh, I guess I get what you're saying.
Christina.
I want it to read like the Saturday, Sunday, you get a day in lieu on like the Monday or whatever. That's how I interpret the current language. Because the day happens no matter what. And so a non-operational day will be provided for that day, not on that.
Craig.
And so again, I stand by the way I worded it. Provides us the ability to recognize Day of National Truth and Reconciliation in the best way we can get it done without getting us hung up on all these little details.
Craig.
Currently, since the Truth and Reconciliation National Day by the federal government, have we canceled school on that day? On the 30th?
Yes.
I can't remember, so.
Yeah.
We have every year except for when it's on a weekend.
Yeah,
on the
I
weekend,
just
we have
couldn't
not
remember.
provided a day in lieu.
Okay.
Christine.
I think for 2.3, the amendment presented, I think it makes this policy less strong in giving direction to operations because it clearly defines a 2-week break. It clearly defines a spring break. It clearly defines family week break, right? And so I think to say it provides recognition, it gives opportunity to recognize, well, what does that mean? Is that something that goes in a calendar? Is it something that's school based? I think what we're looking for here is something that's division wide in policy. So when they're making the calendar, they know what we need to do and they know who to check off the box. So I feel like it's a little, that wording is arbitrary. I support your 2.5 and 2.6, but I think 2.3 needs to stay as it is.
I have a question for you, Christine. So then with Remembrance Day, how do they know what to do? If it's on a Saturday, how do they know what to do? There's people that work on the statutory holidays. Pardon?
Remembrance Day is a statutory holiday, so that's outlined by the government.
So it'd be easier if this was in the collective agreements. Tyler.
Question for Christine Lee. As this is worded here, I'm open to the friendly amendment. I'm going to call that friendly, even though it goes back to the original. Christine Lee, the way that's worded there, is that generally, because I think it's coming forward that this is going into collective agreements. As that's worded there, is that the way we could word it in collective agreements going forward? Does that look like that's an acceptable way to word it? Because they do need to match.
So I think in the collective agreement, it talks about a day in lieu. Mike.
I can chime in, which likely isn't going to be helpful. From the perspective of this policy, really what we're talking about is giving guidance to administration in terms of how they set the calendar. A lot of the conversations about lieu days and that are in many ways separate, and they're often dealt with through collective agreement, that sort of thing. We have a number of employees who don't have a collective agreement, so that isn't determined either. So I think that the first thing is you have to decide, do you want to provide that direction or not? And that's probably the first, because the way it is right now, if you're creating the calendar, you would look at that and say, okay, I have to have a day off for September 30th. And really that's the question about the intention and the rest of it, lieu day. And if you really feel strongly that we want to put lieu day in there, you can, but it's not anywhere else. So I'm not sure, because I would agree 100%. Then you're getting into collective bargaining. And that's the part that I'm struggling with a little bit too, is I'm not 100% sure. Also remember, whatever decision is made, you still approve the calendar. So you can say you can say we're doing X or Y on that day. So there is sort of another bit of oversight that you have when a decision is made. Right now, what's happening is we look at it. I'll tell you exactly what happened this year. I looked at it. I said, I know this will be a question. I looked at what other school divisions were doing. I put it into the calendar as I believe as a non-operational day. So that's the biggest thing. That's the challenge right now is there's no guidance on it. So it's hard to know what to do. And you're basically just leaving it up to administration to make a decision. But then ultimately you approve it. So I know that probably doesn't help, but I don't know that you fully have to make a decision on the Lou Day or not right now necessarily.
I think actually if you word it, you give the most flexibility to address it and also work around anything that becomes in collective bargaining by saying provide for a day in recognition of National Truth and Reconciliation. And then that gives flexibility in the calendar to designate whatever day you want to do as a non-instructional day or choose to move it somewhere else. But it doesn't necessarily bind you, but a collective agreement will bind you.
I like it. It's a friendly amendment for me.
Christina.
No amendment to the amending of the amendment, but I just want to be clear that the proposal I was putting forward is to be not flexible, is to be very concrete in offering a day the way we offer it to all other stats. So just putting my 2 cents in. So I'll be voting no on that amendment.
Jenny.
With it worded that way, does it still allow for, like I made my point before about if we're giving a day off in December or a paid day in December during a holiday? Is that what it is that? Just okay. Thank you for clarifying that. It doesn't that anyway. That doesn't to me accomplish the intention of what we're trying to do.
Again, I think Mike made actually a very good point is that it's directional. So when it comes back, if the calendar comes back and it's been designed with a day in December that you don't agree with and you think it shouldn't be there, then you change it. You have the final say.
Jenny, you need to speak in the mic, sorry.
I don't know that we would be aware of that, right? I don't think that it doesn't show up in the calendar. This is a day we're paying staff, right? I mean, I don't think we saw that in this calendar
last year, and that was where I thought.
Last year it was on a Saturday.
Yes.
Oh, I thought we said we did do that. So we did do that last year, but and I'm not saying you should have told us that. I'm just saying it was a decision that was made on the operations side and not necessarily put into the calendar that went out to everyone, right? As it shouldn't have.
Yes, it wouldn't be.
So we wouldn't necessarily know that.
It wouldn't be for the school year calendar policy. That's just for the creation of the calendar. Then when you get a situation like that where it falls, then usually what happens is you work with the appropriate unions to figure out what is consistent with the collective agreement, their understanding, and often that's a day in lieu.
Craig.
Just help me remind, and I know that Remembrance Day is statutory in Alberta. In some provinces it isn't, but when it falls on a Saturday, do we give the unions a day in lieu? Or do we give them, or can they take a day off? Teachers don't get a day off if it's on a Saturday. So I'm just wondering, we need to be consistent if it's on a weekend. It can't be any different than Remembrance Day. So I'm just wondering, what is our usual thing with Remembrance Day falling on a Saturday or Sunday with our unions?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. I couldn't tell you for unions or non-unions. We can try and get that answer, but I think that's more on the operational end. But yeah, I would hate to give you bad information, Craig. I'm just not.
And we do not have a policy on that. That would be in procedure and operations.
I believe, but I might be wrong, most of the stats in the QP agreements, most of those days are actually in the agreement, and it says this is a day off, and so I think they're defined in the collective agreement. Obviously, this one wasn't because it was a new one, and it is unique because it's federal but not provincial.
So go ahead, Christine.
I was going to say it's either a day off or it's part of their pay, right? So for instance, with 2843, when we give them their pay, they have X number of days plus the days holidays that are paid, right? And so because school's not in, so they're getting the pay for those days that school's not in. Same with 290. And so that's how we get around. And teachers, well, the calendar's based on so many days, right? Yeah.
So I guess I would say that I like Tyler's suggestion because I would leave it to the administration if it's on a Saturday or Sunday to decide how they want to deal with it. Similar to Remembrance Day. If it's during the week, I have no problem with that. But it just seems like it should be very similar to Remembrance Day. Anything on the weekend, they either get a day in lieu or they get extra pay. And I would just leave it at that because that's then consistent with what we do with other things that fall on a Saturday, Sunday.
And at the beginning of the policy, it has the statement that calendars for employee groups shall be determined after the school year calendar is approved. So then they would determine when that day, yes, based on the calendar that we approve, based on this policy. Okay. Tyler has the amendments. Can you please clarify for us what 2.3 is going to be with your amendment?
Does anyone, other than Christine, oh, yeah, I got a comment?
Are we voting on them as a group? Because
that is the amendment that is on the floor currently from Tyler, and I'm just clarifying the amendment.
The truth and reconciliation one.
Sorry, Andrea, what?
I would like the truth and reconciliation one to be clear that it's a non-operational day in recognition. So I would like it separated out from the names of the others. That makes sense to me in the voting.
Okay, I'm sensing more support for truth for 2.3 worded as it was originally presented. Is that correct? Okay, I will, as far as 2.3 goes, I have no amendments to 2.3. As was. So I only amend 2.4, 2.6, and 2.7. Oh,
just sorry. One clarification on 2.5, Tyler, because I think you said it's good as is. I assume it would be provide for a family day break on Tuesday and Wednesday, not provide for a break on the Tuesday and Wednesday following family day. As presented in the package. Okay, thanks. Okay, thanks. Appreciate that.
So that is, I guess, it. Wrap up my little thing here. Hopefully that helps us get through. To me, kind of like along the lines of what Craig said with Remembrance Day or whatever, we're not specifying how these things are being treated, but for some reason, some of us feel that we need to do that. I think for the fact that if we just said we were recognizing it, and that was a point, and we were giving instruction to recognize truth and reconciliation. It made sense to me, but that's fine. I'm good if we can get this done. I'm okay to move forward with it as is. So that's it. And I'll request we call the question.
Excellent, thank you. So we have called a question on the amendment, and it's only on the amendment, which is 2.4, 2.6, and 2.7, as Tyler has outlined. So those in favor and those opposed. And that is carried, the amendment. So now, just Jenny was opposed. Yep. So now we are back to the original motion with the amendments of 2.4, 2.6, and 2.7 have been amended and accepted. And I understand there's another amendment. Andrea.
I would like to make a friendly amendment that to regulations number 1 to add after students and a minimum of 950 hours of instruction for students in grades 1 through 9 and a minimum of 475 hours of instruction for kindergarten students.
Okay, we'll see if we can get that as friendly. The original mover, do you consider that as friendly, or does that change the intent of Regulation 1?
I consider it as friendly.
Okay. So that is in there as a friendly amendment. Is there any other discussion on this policy? Tyler?
Just to confirm, we are currently at all times meeting 475 hours, correct, for kindergarten?
Yeah, that's a requirement
Okay.
in the guide to education.
Good.
So yeah, it's good. It's consistent.
Andrea's like winking. So, okay. Any further discussion or comment on this? Seeing none. Those in favor? And those opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. Back to Christine.
All right, team policy number 2. Okay, a second policy to look at today is policy 600.2, school-based decision making. I think this one's a little more straightforward. You have the policy before you with their amendments. So again, we looked at the website and stakeholder feedback. We had the 3 items of feedback were received online, and they were all parents, bless you, or caregivers. Yeah, it's just some slight word changes. I'm not going to read through it. You can see it there. And the committee sent it to the board for approval. Are there any questions?
Questions? I see no questions. Craig, I lied.
Just a question on the policy. It says provincial procedures. I think they're provincial regulations is the exact word that the government uses, isn't it?
We did have a conversation about that because we didn't get into because it was about legislations, regulations, that sort of thing, and we just kind of decided to go with more of a generic term of procedures to kind of catch all of that.
Okay.
But yes, you're correct. There are regulations, like there are regulations attached to the Education Act that form part of the act. Yeah, for sure.
Christine?
I'd like to move that the board adopt the revisions to policy 600.2, school-based decision making as presented.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Now we are on 10.4, QP Local 2843. Christine Lee.
Thank you. I'm pleased to report that a memorandum of agreement was reached on April 11th with QP Local 2843 for the term for September 1st, 2020 to August 31st, 2024. We've been negotiating since June of last year, and we have come to, we had very respectful negotiations, productive negotiations, and we're able to achieve an agreement in accordance with the Public Sector Employers Act and as approved by the Public Bargaining and Compensation Office of the province of Alberta. And we were able to make some compensation improvements for the QP Local 2843 members in this memorandum of agreement, and we're happy to be able to give them some increases in their pay. They held a ratification vote on April 18th, and it was approved. And so now we are bringing forward the recommendation to accept the memorandum of agreement that we achieved on April 11th. And maybe I'll ask the committee chair if she wants to comment.
Thanks, Christine. Well, first, I'd like to thank the Division Negotiating Committee for all the work and time that you've put into this negotiation process. There were some creative solutions found to be able to honor our staff members as well as we were able to. And I would even more so like to extend gratitude and thanks to our CUPE Local 2843 negotiating team. Thank you for your time. I know we had some staff members that took time out of schools away from kids to negotiate on behalf of their group. They negotiated well, they represented their coworkers well, and it was I really appreciated, I know our team appreciated hearing their stories and hearing their experiences, and just how, and we're reminded again how valuable and essential these individuals are. Our schools would not function well without them. And we, at the end of our conversation, we did speak as board members to our continued need for advocacy on their behalf to the government. These staff members deserve a living wage. These staff members deserve to be recognized in this way. Our board needs to have an ability to be autonomous in bargaining with our own employees, and our board needs to receive funding to be able to pay our support staff in a way that recognizes the essential value of their work and their presence in our division. So I'd like to thank all members of CUPE 2843 for their hard and dedicated work to our students and to our community. Yes, and it's exciting to be at this place where we can accept this contract with them. And so I move that the memorandum of agreement between the Board of Trustees of Lethbridge School Division and the Canadian Union of Public Employees number 2843 dated the 11th of April 2024 be approved.
Comments or questions? So I do have a couple of comments just to say that I know it was a lot of tough negotiating, and to get to this part was lots of great work to come to this place of agreement. If assuming that it's going to be passed, I'll support the agreement that passes. I echo when you say that it's about the continued advocacy. I've advocated for these people for years. Sorry. These people deserve a living wage. They're working with our most vulnerable students in the classroom every day. And I know that our members came out to vote and that they did vote to pass this. But I also need to stand for those ones that this isn't going to put milk on their table. So I will be voting against this, and it's not that I won't support it going forward, but I need to continue to advocate for what's important for our staff. So any other comments? Seeing none, those in favor and those opposed. And that's carried. So going forward, absolutely, it's great that we will be able to provide these increases to our staff and be able to support them in the best ways that we can. And we still have a lot of work to do. So thank you, everybody. Next, we'll move on to committee review. Christina.
So in your package, you'll find a memo just outlining some thoughts I've had on committees and have discussed this with many of you already, but board committees are struck by the board as similar to holidays. Nothing is inherent. We make all these decisions. And we regularly make the decision to strike all these committees. So you'll see on that memo a list of the committees that are listed in our policy. And certainly we're reviewing policy as well. But as we continue to work through, we are beginning to get ready with our budget, for example, for the next school year. I would like us to give some thought to the committees that serve this division and the division priorities and those tasks and efforts that perhaps are distracting from some of our priorities. We have many, as the school division does. And the people involved in these committees are working on those priorities, but also in many cases being tasked with work that I suspect is maybe no longer aligned with the current values and priorities of the division. So certainly all the committees are struck with intention when they were struck, but I heard a good quote once of like, after a couple of years, everything becomes historical. So it's always worth just double checking that the work that we're putting in, the work that we're expecting from executive council, from staff, from parents, from community members, from students is worth their time, worth our time, and worth the resources that go into it. Every meeting that a paid staff goes to costs us money every single time they gather. Takes them away from students potentially, and potentially takes away their time from those that are the actual priorities of the division, of which we cannot have all of the things be the priority. So to that end, I've developed, worked with Allison and Christine to develop a committee assessment. Just some questions that we would suggest perhaps are questions that could be taken back to your committee or discussed with your, committee co-chairs or whatever you like, basically. Answer these questions, return them to the chair of our board by the end of May to help us going forward into the new school year prior to the organizational meeting about the assessment of these committees. Is that clear?
Thank you. Do you have copies of that you were handing out? Okay. Comments? Thank you. So I think you covered a lot of what my view as well with it, Christina. So thank you for clarifying, for articulating the reason that this has come forward and the work that we're looking at doing. I think it is about, as we go into budget and we look at efficiencies and how can we do better with what we have. I think that this is one of the ways that we can do that. Not seeing other comments or questions yet, but I know that you have in your recommendation to have it to the board chair by May 31st. Just recognizing that we have a board meeting on, I think, May 28th is our next board meeting. Could it be prior to that so that it could be brought to, like, if there's further action to, like, our next steps to happen in this school year, then we could actually still look at those next steps if that deadline is prior to the board meeting. So, okay. And I'm fine with it even if it's a few days before the board meeting, just so that we have it and we can bring it forward for the next steps. So, Craig.
Thank you for this. But when you read this and read some of that, that's exactly what we're supposed to be doing as a committee of the whole when we're doing the policies. And once we look at the policy, especially on the committees, we would then send it back to the policy advisory committee and stakeholders to see if we've got it right or if we want to eliminate some of these. So this to me is just a little more time that could be used in a different way. Instead of making a standing committee, let's just give it to the budget committee, committee of the whole as we're doing our policies, because every one of these committees is part of our policy. So I would find, like, I know that in May, if you ask me, I don't have a lot of extra time in May. And we have a budget we have to deal with. We have an assurance plan we have to deal with. And to put this on the table right now, and we also have to have probably a meeting with David Steele and a review of our superintendent. To me, this is just something that could be put on the back burner as part of our committee of the whole doing our policies, because this is exactly what we would be looking at as far as the policies, as far as our committees. And then we could ask, as we look at this, we could ask for feedback from chair people of the committee and of our policy review committee. So I just cannot go ahead with this at the time, considering all of the other things that we have to get done. It's a good idea, and I appreciate the work that Christina's put into it, but I think it can be done with our policy as we do our policies.
Christine.
Well, I'm thankful that you brought this forward. I know this has been a work that I've been pondering for quite a while, and I think sitting on multiple committees, I personally have observed a lot of inefficiencies, a lot of doubling of information giving, the inefficiency of time given of our stakeholders and our executive, our staff. And so I think this is a great opportunity to just evaluate and streamline our committee system. And I'm not sure that I'm quite in agree. I don't quite understand why this would fall within the policy structure, because I think this is separate. I think Christina was right when, things happen for a couple of years and then they just become historical, and they are because they always have been. And so I think to move forward well, to reevaluate how do we want to honor the time of our staff, how do we want to become more efficient in our committees, how do we want to define and enhance or specify, I should say, that's the better word, specify operational versus governance. I think this assessment would be valuable and important to that. And to be able to bring this questionnaire, sit with your co-lead of your committee, take it to your committee. There are committees coming up over the next month and a bit, and have this on the agenda to kind of allow your team to reflect and bring back. I don't think that's adding an egregious amount of time or effort, and I think the results could be beneficial. Tyler.
Could I request that this be brought forward for the June board meeting, not the May board meeting? Just because some committees don't meet that often. One of those is wellness, and wellness doesn't meet again till the 3rd of June. And I don't think it's worth calling a special meeting or doing something like that. I think it's better to at least, like, if this way it can go out to them, they can look at it, bring it forward to the meeting, and then have discussion there about that. So if I could, that would be my suggestion, just because I know one of my committees is not meeting till the 3rd of June. So.
Christine?
So yes, I agree, there aren't all committees meeting. My concern with that would be if we're wanting something to be set before our organizational meeting, something would need to be adopted at the June meeting. So concern would be feedback coming back and the board isn't ready, and then not being ready for September. So does there need to be an in-person meeting, or can this be information sent out to a committee for online feedback and response as well?
It could if you really want, but I think if you had it in by, whatever, mid-June, early June, so that it's all compiled and in our board package, and we read the board package before we show up, hopefully that is where we would make decisions about it. But whatever, I'm just a thought of, because you're not, the only other thing I would say to that is you're not going to get any discussion about it. So the discussion at a committee might be good. It depends. Now, that being said, for something like the wellness committee, I don't know, we got a lot of people from a lot of different places. So maybe discussion might be too much for there. Are some that just don't really care because they're not from the division. So I don't know. But either way, you just tell me what you want to do, we'll get it done. But
as a compromise, in June, we have our committee of the whole on June 11th. So what if we had them back for June 11th? And then we could have that initial conversation June 11th. And then if there was any action to be taken from it, it could be at our June board meeting. Would that satisfy most committees that you guys all sit on when you look at your calendars? Craig?
Well, I guess my problem is that one of the board's mandates in every school division is to create policy. Now, it seems to me that we're allowing people below the board to create policies for the board. The right way it should be done, according to the Education Act, is the board does the policy, then it sends it out for review from our stakeholders, and then we can adapt it. So I do have a problem in that everything that's quoted here is a policy. Policy 203.4, policy 203.4.1, exhibit, and then policy 203.5. So my concern is we're putting the horse before the cart. We're putting the cart before the horse, sorry about that. Because the board has to look at the policies, and then we have to look at it. And it says obviously right there that these committees are part of policy. So we look at the policies and we say, are these committees working? Is there some adjustment that we can make? And we make the adjustment as a board, then we send it out for review. And that's where these committee people, chairs, and that can make suggestions. To say that we're going to have the suggestions from them before we do the policies, then we've sort of committed that we're going to follow what they're telling us. That's not what, as governors, we should be doing. We should be creating the policy or reviewing the policy and saying, this works, this doesn't work. And there's a couple in here right now that we need to discuss as a board, but we need to do it in the proper way and then send it out. And so I will be voting against this because I think we have to do it in the right way.
Any other comments? So I don't know that you made a motion. So there's not a motion to be voting on. Go ahead, Christina.
I'd like to make a motion. I move that each board committee chair and liaison complete the provided committee assessment form and submit it to the board chair before June 11th. Yeah. Period, not question mark.
Questions, comments, Christine?
To that note, I should know the answer to this. It would be good to have it in our package, so not just by the date. So
So a friendly amendment.
to the date would be my request.
So to have it in by
It's usually a week before.
6th or
June.
7th,
Sure.
that still work for
Mike?
committees? Mike?
I just want to make sure I'm clear. Is there an expectation for administration to do something here, or is it trustees that are doing it? I just want to make.
Trustees may ask the executive member or administration who is part of that committee for their perspective on some of these answers, because certainly like we've heard that already, but not your responsibility. Yeah.
Thanks.
So the friendly amendment would be to be by the 6th of June?
Yep. Okay.
That's the Thursday. And then
Friendly amended,
yeah.
accepted. Yep.
Perfect. Any further questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, those in favor? And those opposed? And that's carried.
I will send this electronically for information.
So we are now on division highlights. Who would like to go first? Just a reminder, it's only one or two things quickly to highlight from what you've been busy doing and hearing in the division. Go ahead, Christina.
Delivering apples for Education Week, always fun. Always get a good workout. Trekking 88 apples up the LCI front quad. Forgot a whole basket, forgot they're a giant school. Only brought them one basket, found another basket when I was done all of the schools in my trunk. Had to go back with the second basket. So happy Apple Week, everyone.
But had to find parking.
But yeah, I got lucky twice actually. But sincerely though, a great appreciation for everyone who supports education in our community. It is the bedrock upon which we build communities, and from staff to volunteers to students, parents, we sincerely so thankful for everyone who contributes.
Andrea.
Thank you for doing the bulk of the apples. That was amazing. I had to bring muscle with me, meaning my husband, to the schools to carry the heavier baskets. I also had a wonderful time supporting the ATA in their presentations to teachers who were nominated, and it was just so much fun surprising them in their classrooms. And then Panago Pizza, which does so much for our division, and then taking them out to the Kona Ice truck. It was wonderful. So I was glad to get to Galbraith and LCI, and then Agnes Davidson and Patterson. I could only get there later to congratulate the teacher, but it was just truly fun to burst into classrooms with balloons. So thank you to the ATA for that, and happy Education Week to all staff. All staff. It was wonderful seeing everyone with the apples.
Excellent. Thank you. Jenny?
Christine Lee included this in her report, but I was at Lakeview and got to hear them talk about having the tech team there and do that hands-on learning experience for those students. And it was so fun to see to hear about the excitement and the passion and what a great experience that was, and unique for these kids to be able to be hands-on and to take apart old non-functioning tech, and then to be asked to put it back together again. And lots of times our kids are taking things apart, but it's a neat experience for them to put it back together as well. And just to hear the enthusiasm for that learning and that use of that space to allow the students to come together from different grade levels and to learn from each other and interact with each other. And I know we have that type of work going on in all of our schools, and for our students to be able to use our learning commons and us to be able to lean on departments that aren't always in our school, and to have that tech team come into the school and to have that student interaction, and I just wanted to highlight that great work.
Thank you. Tyler?
I'd like to move that we extend the meeting past 6 o'clock. And then, first of all, I'm still a little upset Andrea wouldn't carry my apples out to my car for me. But I've moved on. I'm moving on now anyway. In regard to Christina, who earlier was saying, after you do something for a few years, it just becomes what you do. I have kind of reached my limit on apples for Education Week, and I know there's going to be some staff that agree with me that apples aren't my favorite treat. So I am asking that the board start now thinking about next year on Education Week, and we think of perhaps changing. I know that apples are associated with teachers, and I know it was a fun thing, and I was here when it started. It was great. But I feel like maybe it's time to have something a little more like a treat for our staff. So that's all I'm saying going forward.
Thanks, Tyler. And you can bring that up next year when we're discussing what we're going to do. We look forward to your great ideas that you bring forward. Okay, Christine.
Well, I was able to attend the celebration of a staff member at Galbraith, and it was the AT. It was so much fun. Oh my goodness, the tears in the room of just joy and gratitude of students to their teacher, and the surprise and appreciation of being recognized was really beautiful. And so I was so thankful to be able to be part of that and delivering apples. And just connecting with staff, because really that's what it's about at the end of the day. It's connecting with our incredible staff and celebrating who they are and what they do for our students and our school community. And rugby season has started, and I've caught a few games, and the kids are super fun to watch.
Thanks. Craig?
Due to my eye surgery in April, I wasn't allowed to drive, supposedly, and I can't carry anything over 20 pounds, and I can't bend down. So not only did I miss Education Week, but I also missed golf for the whole month. And so that's it. Although I can see, so that's a good thing.
Other division highlights? So for me, I as well, in regards to the tech team that went out, and I just happened to be driving down the road, and they were coming back out with their boxes of parts, and it was actually some of our work experience students from Lethbridge College that went in and did that with our Lakeview students. And one thing that I really like is when we have students teaching other students. So I think that that's kind of my theme this month of our division highlights, is those recognizing those Lethbridge College work experience students that went in and did that work, as well as on our Facebook page, you'll see the math club from Churchill. They went into Lakeview as well, and did some work in the evening, and really gave an appreciation for making math fun. And then in addition to that, when we look at our students that are going and teaching other students, is our LCI Earth Club. And they went into Agnes Davidson and talked to those kids about the importance of loving bees and bees as pollinators. And that is something that was just out of, like they learn about what it is to give back and to go and help other students, and to be passing on the knowledge that they learn and know to others, and how important that is. So I think that just highlighting our division, that these are things that our students and our staff are supporting, so that these students can make these things happen. So it's absolutely amazing. Education Week, it was awesome, as everybody else had said, and it was to celebrate everybody. So it was great taking the apples. I was able to go early in the morning, which was great. It was before the school day started for a lot of our schools, and it was the staff I had accessibility to staff then, so it was great to have those conversations. So it was it worked in my schedule, and it ended up working out that I could meet and talk with more people. So it was a great opportunity that week. So that is it for my highlights. Andrea.
I would just like to add a thanks to Garrett for coming out and photographing everything and getting that up there, because that was really exciting for the kids. And he was there every time, and it was wonderful. Thank you, Garrett.
Excellent, thank you. So next we're on to board chair's report. And virtually installed Lethbridge schools. So this is an opportunity for our students to be recognized for the artwork that they do, and their art is displayed in Southern Alberta Art Gallery through our Arts Alive and Well in Schools. It's an amazing opportunity. I was able to last year to go and speak. I know Christina joined us that day, and it is open for the public to go and view what's on display from our students from May 11th to June 15th. And just a recognition as well to our staff that support the work so that this can happen. So Kathy, as well as Garrett, if it wasn't for them putting this together and doing this, I know Kathy has done this work for years, and it just really supports our students at things that they shine on. So if you have an opportunity, please go and take a look. We have been invited to speak at the opening ceremonies as well, so we'll be doing that as a board. And please go out and take the time to go visit that, and at your school councils, if you can encourage parents that might not have students that have their artwork displayed, but that they know that is happening, and they can go and look at that. So are there any comments or questions? Okay, so next is our welcome back event. So maybe Tyler will have a great grand idea, but the last couple of years we have switched to doing the pancake breakfast, and that has been hosted by the board and held at Chinook High School. It does take a number of our amazing division staff to help us. Our executive council are out bright and early setting everything up at 6 a.m. and flipping pancakes, and it is a great morning. It's a great opportunity for us to interact with our staff as they come back from summer and welcome them back to the school year. But just looking to see if that is what we would like to do again, or Tyler has some great ideas otherwise, or what do we want to do? Christina.
So I guess in honor of challenging historical things. I guess the question is like, does it have the impact we want? Which is to what? Gather staff. I guess, does it meet that? Does it meet, what is the goal and does it meet it before we say that?
In terms of staff numbers that come, Christine, do you have any, like, pardon? There's quite a few that come.
Quite a few come. So being the historian in the room, who've been here for 25 years, many years we did the gather in the gym, had a guest, nice welcome from the board chair and the superintendent, and had a guest speaker, and then an opportunity for people to they mingled as they got the little breakfast pastries and whatnot in a gym. We've actually gotten a little big to be in a gym. It was very crowded. It's been, and also people are antsy to get back to their schools, get back to getting ready for school. And even though like a speaker is very valuable, quite often we have some really amazing speakers, there's still that antsy, still wanting to connect. The difference I've seen from the pancake breakfast, even though it's not formal and there isn't a speaker, people are gathering and they're laughing and they're talking and they get an opportunity to, hey, how are you? I didn't see your summer. What's going on? So if your value is to say, hey, welcome back, and get an opportunity to connect, then that's your great venue. If it's, we want to gather you and have you sit for a couple hours and listen to a speaker or some speeches, then that's the other event. I don't know. My feeling is this one, the pancake breakfast, has been the most, I think, appreciated myself. But I might be wrong.
Would you say it's similarly attended as when it was the lecture speech?
Oh yeah, for sure. I would say, but then we've gotten bigger. So yeah, I think it's attended. Those who won't plan to come don't come anyways. But yeah, it's just less crowded and it's more comfortable.
Okay. Craig.
Well, one of the things I miss in the fall is that in other divisions that I've been in and worked and seen, it's nice to celebrate years of service in front of everybody and not just at a school. Because I think sometimes we don't realize some of our teachers have taught 40 years or 35. And the places that I've been at where we've celebrated everybody at the same time, and it doesn't take long. The applause and the standing ovation for that individual teacher or teachers is just really remarkable. And that's what I do miss, is that in June, it's sort of like on the last day, and then you're trying to go to 3 schools and do this. They can do their own celebration, but it would be nice as part of our pancake breakfast to have, and I don't know the logistics of it, and I know that we're getting too big, but it would be nice to celebrate years of service in front of everybody. And so I just leave that as an idea.
Others? Tyler.
Just a quick amendment on Craig's idea. I've been to some schools where it's quite long to to go through that. So it would have, for me, I agree that's something that's interesting, but it would have to be like 25 years plus, something like that. It couldn't be the 5 year to the 10 year, the 15 year. That's all I'd say on that. If you have 25 years plus, yeah, you could probably, it'd be nice to probably celebrate that among all the people, that's significant of a milestone.
We just add, so that Tyler doesn't think it's going to be long, there is no speeches. It's just, here are the people, get up there, get your award and sit down and let everybody else go through. So
I'm not seeing a huge pickup for that. And I'm not seeing a huge opposition to doing the pancake breakfast as we have in the past. So I believe that your direction is to do the same pancake breakfast. Let us know date, time, and place and what we need to do as trustees. Sounds good. So next we have community conversations, and I do have a date and time and location. So it is Wednesday, May 15th from 9 to 10 a.m. at the Redwood Frank's Cafe on the north side. and that's the time that they can only accommodate daytime. So we're going to work with that, and in 9 to 10 a.m. May 15th. Yep. So we'll encourage parents after they've dropped their kids off at school to come and visit us if they're not off to work. But it gives that opportunity for parents, community members to come join us. I know staff obviously can't, but that is there, and Garrett has the information. He'll be posting that and sharing that. Next is 12.4 is the policy committee meeting, and that's Christine Light.
All right, super quick. One thing I just wanted to highlight from the report, we had our first reading of policy 502.1, welcoming, caring, respectful, and safe learning environments. And as we were reading through it as a committee and discussing the possible edits, we saw that 502.1 is about safe learning environments and should be student focused. However, within the policy, it included trustees, employees, parents, and volunteers. So it wasn't super clear within the knowledge or within the context. And then there's also policy 400.1, welcoming, caring, safe, respectful, and safe work environments, which is almost identical, which deals with employees. And so we ceased conversation and decided as a committee to send this on to the policy consultant for review and consideration. So I just wanted to highlight that for you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, so seeing none, next is our correspondence sent. So that is there, and we are at the end of our agenda and do need to move back to in camera. There will be no requirement for, there'll be no motions made after. So Garrett and Kristen are welcome to leave after we've moved into camera. So you were moving us into camera. Christine's moving us into camera. Those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.